In the kingdom of Asteria, the world ends the moment the 5 great sins awaken. 5 divine weapons reborn as children, each one capable of erasing a nation alone. The only man who knows this apocalypse is coming decided the answer was not war, not conquest, but charity. Alan Palacio was a corporate slave who played this world like a game, then died and woke up inside it. He has no powers, no allies, and absolutely no business founding a cult. So he sends one loyal knight to rescue 5 doomed kids and tells himself he's just being a helpful uncle they've never met.
10 years later,
those children have become gods who worship him as the Great Moon. And he still thinks they're sending him polite thank you letters. This is the Patron of villains.
A single handwritten note sends a child soldier across a continent, and the man who wrote it was just trying to be polite. Deus kneels in the cracked stone courtyard of some forgotten inn, and the girl looking back at him is the sister he buried in his head years ago. She sobs into his chest, clutching him like the world might still take him back, and Deus realizes the Great Moon didn't send him a weapon, he sent him the only family he had left. This is the Patron of villains, where every thank you note becomes scripture and every gift receipt is a miracle. We'll circle back to how a cult this powerful got started by accident, but first, let's watch the man who wrote the note panic about something completely unrelated. Our protagonist is currently living his best life in a bathtub, which is exactly the kind of power fantasy we signed up for until you remember he got here by dying at his desk. We meet Macaulay in his study, surrounded by paperwork and 5 figures who apparently think he's their patron, and his face says he would rather be anywhere else, including back in the afterlife. Before we get attached, the story reminds us that psychedelia is the kind of game world where gods throw hands, continents crack, and the apocalypse is less a spoiler and more a scheduled maintenance window. Alon wakes up as a noble and immediately fails the literacy check, holding the book upside down while the butler questions his employment choices, then discovers mansions come with buffet lines and maid-attended baths. The name Palacio finally registers, and Alon has the most dignified panic attack possible underwater, because he has just realized he is inside the role-playing game he played during his 78-hour work week instead of sleeping. The lore dump hits like a patch note nobody asked for. Wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession show up. The world falls, and your 2 older brothers are named Leo and Tonio, which is basically a death flag in name form. Alan collapses in the grand hall, clutching a flower like it's the only 401k he has left, mourning the fact that he got isekai'd into a body with 0 powers, while everyone else gets cheat codes and a redemption arc. Then he has the kind of idea that only makes sense if you're desperate. Reform the 5 great sins while they're still children, because even world-ending weapons start out small enough to bribe with snacks and a bedtime story. Enter Evan, a knight with an eye patch and the energy of a man who has seen too much, whom Alan hires after complimenting his skill while performing a smile so forced it looks like a hostage video. Evan is flagged as a rare character, which in gacha terms means Alan accidentally pulled a 4-star bodyguard, and the flashback shows exactly where the sins come from, a dungeon of chained girls who deserved a much better tutorial level. Alon greenlights the first rescue mission. The lore reveals Wrath is a non-human who signs a contract with something from beyond the refund window, and our boy leans back like he just cleared a side quest instead of adopting a future apocalypse. Alan hands Evan a sealed letter and instructions to sponsor the kid quietly, and Evan rides off looking like a man delivering a tax audit to a dragon, while Alan watches from the window with the confidence of someone who has never met a toddler. We get the original timeline flashback where an archbishop tries to befriend Utia with a spell that sounds like a rejected prog rock album title, and the spell fails so hard, the screen turns into a horror movie. The archbishop's attempt ends with a demon girl screaming that it's too late and blood decorating the scenery, then cuts back to Alon stretching in the present like he didn't just outsource the saving of a child to a one-eyed knight and a hope. Alon worries about his brothers while Utia stands in a courtyard holding the letter, and Evan looks like a man who has just realized his delivery job includes emotional damage coverage. Utia reads the letter, her eyes go full wrath mode. Evan panics and blurts out the phrase that will haunt this entire series, and somehow, "It's not yet time," calms her down like it's a divine command instead of a man stalling for his life. Utia hugs the letter to her chest and decides this is a secret promise only her master could know, and the amount of pink energy swirling around her is directly proportional to how badly Alon has misunderstood his own politeness. Alon lies in bed thinking he has extended his luxurious lifespan, completely unaware that his thank you note has just been canonized as scripture, and that is exactly the kind of dramatic irony this channel was built for. There's a moment in every accidental cult's origin story where someone stares into the camera like they planned it all, and that someone is currently a little girl with white hair and glowing red eyes. 2 months after Alon outsourced the apocalypse to a knight with an eye patch, he is in the library pretending he can read documents while books fall around him like the universe is subtweeting his competence. Evan reports back from the first rescue mission, and the news is good enough that Alon immediately dispatches him to a human experimentation facility, because one moral crisis at a time is apparently too slow. Enter Tonio Palatio, the second brother and local drug cartel manager, who walks into the library, uses Alon's head as a handrail, and stomps on him with the enthusiasm of a man who thinks family therapy is for weaker dynasties. A dagger embeds itself in the cracked wall behind them, which is either foreshadowing or just this family's preferred interior design language. Leo Palladio arrives with the energy of a final boss who read the script early, and Tonio's smugness evaporates faster than a puddle in a dragon's driveway. The Palacio brothers are fighting over the family head position while their father Aldemar lounges in debauched luxury, proving that this household has more succession drama than a Succession spin-off and significantly worse parenting. Alon and Evan debrief the situation with the emotional bandwidth of two people who have accepted that their family reunion will require hazard pay, and Alon declares he is tired in a body that has done absolutely nothing. The lore drop arrives like a patch note nobody asked for. The United Kingdom's central nation is Callian, and the second boss of Psychedelia is a man named Deus Macallian, which is a lot of pressure to put on one kid. Deus's backstory is a horror montage of cages, grasping hands, and a transformation into the sin of sloth that looks less like an awakening and more like a subscription service he never signed up for. The game flashes forward to its true ending, where warriors fall, cities crack, and the sin of sloth unleashes enough dark energy to make a climate scientist cry, and Alon watches it all while sipping tea. Alon puts down his cup and explains, with the calm of a man who has no idea what he has already set in motion, that he sent Deus to an orphanage because it is not yet time. Young Palacio stands in an ethereal forest, looking broken in the literal sense, because the manhwa went ahead and put the word broken on screen like a content warning for his entire life. Utia descends from the narrative heavens in a frilly dress and glowing red eyes, which is exactly how you want your future wrath to show up when you're recruiting a traumatized child. She offers Deus a pact under the full moon, and the cosmic energy that erupts is doing more work than any contract lawyer ever could. Then comes the key reveal. Someone in black gloves is reading Alon's letter to Utia in a dark forest, and the letter opens with, "Morning, dear sisters," and a complaint about his brother using him as a chair. Evan bursts in shouting, "Big trouble," corrects himself to the scum, "No, I mean the second young master," and before Alan can process the grammar, Tonio is already bloodied, defeated, and lying in a coffin. At the funeral, Aldemar sits flanked by women in red and blue dresses like this. Is a social event, while Alon stands there thinking he is hungry, which is the most honest grief response in the room. Leo laughs maniacally over Tonio's body with a sword still in the corpse's back, then turns to Alan and points out the lucky break look on his face, which is rich coming from the man who just committed fratricide in a chapel. A time skip later, Alon and Leo are having tea like nothing happened. A woman notes that keeping in touch with Utia will prove helpful, and Leo reads letters calling the sins good kids, which is the understatement of the decade. Alon and Evan review the sponsor list over tea and pastries, while the Information Guild reports a clue, and the violent, dark struggle in the background reminds us that rescuing world-ending weapons is not a desk job. Then Blue Moon makes its operational debut in a courtyard that now resembles a paint swatch catalog for the color Regret, with bodies everywhere and Deus kneeling in despair like he did not expect his puppet strings to trend this hard. A victim screams that his hand is moving on its own, a blonde attacker finishes the last target, and Deus's puppet threat ability officially has the worst workplace safety record of any power introduced this act. Utia attacks with a glowing purple blade. Deus manipulates glowing purple threads like a vengeful seamstress, and together they establish Blue Moon's sword and shield dynamic, while everyone else establishes a body count. Utia surveys the carnage and asks how they can let the place be shabby when he arrives, which is the most deranged interior design justification for mass violence I have ever heard in a manhwa. The chapter climax is a massive energy explosion engulfing a city while Utia and Deus float against a crescent moon, and Blue Moon announces itself to the world with all the subtlety of a surprise, twice comeback stage. Chapter 3 opens with the before picture, 5 children in a dark cell, hands reaching upward from purple light, and a white-haired woman being tortured with syringes while a scarred man looks away. The after picture is the same kid silhouetted in a bright town square, now laughing and lighting up, which is the kind of glow-up that only happens when someone finally pays for therapy and snacks. Alon decides they will not need a separate caretaker, reads Utia's letter, and internally attributes her sentimental attachment to character background, which is a very polite way of saying, this child has trauma, and I am ignoring it. Evan asks if the letter says anything important. The children play in a sunny courtyard, and Alon deflects with, maybe in 5 years, while covering his mouth because he is terrified to ever meet them in person. Alon's internal flash-forward shows the 4 sins screaming in anguish as they are turned into sins, and he admits he is still scared even though he rescued them before those events, because foreknowledge is a full-time anxiety job. Evan asks about the future again. Alon mumbles, maybe in 5 years while covering his mouth, and then they go back to magical sparring because the only coping mechanism available is violence and cardio. Evan mentions an organization recently famous for hunting criminal rings, and Alon, wearing an ornate uniform and holding a glowing orb, dismisses them with the confidence of a man who has never heard of Blue Moon, and assumes they will vanish soon. The energy blast that follows is the universe's way of saying, you are going to regret that sentence, and also, your entire life. Cut to Blue Moon's actual meeting, where Utia asks about the North and Seal Ring cheerfully reports that she has taken all the slave traders' heads, which is one way to measure quarterly growth. Ryan reports that the South is finished too, and the 5 sins gather in a glowing hall looking like the world's most problematic middle school club photo. Ladon sits on the stairs grinning like a man who is already aligned to the symmetry of several corpses, and the atmosphere is less team meeting and more villain debut showcase. A Blue Moon operative presents a dangerous written order found while cleaning the South, and the room goes quiet in a way that usually precedes someone becoming a historical event. Utia reacts with a single, "What?" and then her robes reveal themselves in full wrath mode, because nothing says concerned about my masters like enough red energy to power a small kingdom. The other sins sit nervously while Utia processes the threat, and you can tell they are all thinking the same thing. When she says, I see, someone is about to stop seeing forever. The written order's aftermath reaches the Palladio estate. Tonio's death is officially heart failure, which is medically inaccurate but politically convenient. Leo hears that Blue Moon struck again last night, and that everyone was wiped out, and the underworld officially upgrades its wariness from concerned to we need a bigger prayer budget. Back at the estate, the staff panic packs luggage because the second brother's death means Alon might be next, and Evan asks if they are going to Rodmill, which is less an escape plan and more a delayed funeral RSVP. Alan wakes up somewhere else, making toast and eggs with Evan, because nothing resets the trauma meter like a good breakfast, unless you remember you are only eating it because your brother got murdered. The letter arrives requesting Alon's return for his brother's funeral, and Alon reacts with the enthusiasm of a man who just learned his weekend plans now include a casket and a power vacuum. A tall figure looms over a terrified companion in the rain, and the violet energy glow in the air suggests that this family's grief counseling sessions are going to involve significantly more lightning than recommended. At the funeral, Alan asks what is wrong with Leo, and Evan reports that the organization that made Avalon vanish overnight is still a mystery, which is the kind of mystery you solve by becoming it. The staff react with the appropriate level of terror, and Alan stands there wondering how he became the protagonist of a funeral he did not script. And that little girl with the glowing red eyes? She is still staring, because she has already decided that one polite letter is a covenant, one orphanage is a temple, and one terrified noble is the moon itself. Loria Altea looks Alan dead in the eye and admits the truth. Nobody else will. She does not appear anywhere in the game he played. That single sentence should terrify him more than any assassin, because it means the timeline is already rewriting itself around him. A flashback slams in, some dark-eyed noble heir glaring down at a blonde woman in green, and the atmosphere says this family was never going to sort itself out peacefully. Loria's bloodline is the kind of mess that makes the Palladio house look functional. She blushes mid-confession, stammering that she is going to be something, and the panel cuts away before she finishes, because this show loves a good dramatic ellipsis more than it loves closure. Cut to a sunset balcony where Alan and a blonde figure stand together, and the mood is doing a lot of heavy lifting for a conversation we do not get to hear. This is the will they won't, they lighting package, premium tier. Then the episode drops the punchline, Chibi Alan, reading a book literally titled Tips for Socializing, because after accidentally founding a cult and inheriting a county, his next boss fight is making small talk at parties. But to understand how we got here, we rewind to Alan's great escape. An ornate carriage rolls down a grand road, 4 white horses pulling him away from the Palladio estate, like the universe finally gave him a rideshare out of the main quest. Inside, Evan suggests maybe a city would be smarter, and Alan responds with the thoughtful diplomacy of a man who has already decided and is only pretending to consult his GPS. That smirk is the expression of a corporate veteran who has just filed his 2 weeks' notice with the apocalypse. He is going to Rodmill, and nothing short of divine intervention is changing his mind. A fractured flashback shows the rescued children huddled in distress, a reminder that Alan's entire retirement plan is built on 5 kids who could each delete a country if their therapy bills go unpaid. Then the contrast cut hits. Those same kids picnicking in a sun-dappled forest, laughing, reading, being normal children. Alan's sponsorship program is working, which is the most dangerous thing that could possibly happen to a man who thinks he is just being nice. They arrive at Rodmill, and Alan rests his chin on his hand like a man who is already emotionally moved into a hammock. This is the rural villa life he sold himself in every corporate burnout fantasy. Evan calls him out immediately. You only say things are fine when you are deeply not fine, and this departure was suspiciously quick. Evan has known him long enough to recognize a panic relocation when he sees one. Another carriage departs the estate in parallel, and Aldemore watches from a balcony with the vacant serenity of a man whose bloodstream is mostly recreational chemistry. He has no idea his eldest son is about to start the final round of family succession. In a dark chamber, Leo tells a subordinate that since Alan quietly headed to the border, he has lost all reason to kill him. That is the kind of sentence that only sounds reassuring if you have never met a Palladio brother. Leo then orders Ullman to follow the carriage, and the subordinate reacts with the exact energy of someone who just realized the meeting agenda included murder. Ullman, who we will learn is Haydn playing the long con, asks the question every henchman dreads, "You want me to kill him?" Leo does not say no, which in this family counts as a signed contract. On a rooftop at dusk, Hedan turns the implied order back on Leo with the kind of occupational pivot you only see in top-tier undercover work. Leo's rage face is the last expression his ego gets to wear. Blade through the chest. Blood on the stones. Leo collapses, and the man he sent to kill his brother just canceled the entire Avalon business model with one thrust. Haydn says it was fun up until now, which is the coldest goodbye this side of a John Wick contract review, and those glowing blue eyes are not the eyes of a subordinate anymore. Then comes the reveal, as the blue moon is that man's sword. It is only natural. He moves according to the great moon's wishes. Haydn has been a sleeper agent for 2 years, and the loyalty program just auto-renewed with Leo's blood. 2 stylized blue scythes flash against the void, and Hedon cuts through Leo's remaining guard so efficiently, the body count becomes a footnote. This is what happens when you let a cult handle your hour's disputes. Leo gasps on the ground, and Haydn tells him he has been waiting 2 years for Leo to say exactly that. 2 years. Embedded. eating Leo's bread, attending Leo's meetings, nodding at Leo's jokes. The dedication is almost as disturbing as the murder. Haidan delivers the final line. With Leo's words, Avalon will disappear from the continent forever. One assassination, one sentence, and an entire criminal empire gets uninstalled like a deprecated plugin. Meanwhile, Alon wakes up in Rodmill greeting the morning, eating toast, wondering if he should open a toast stand. He is living the dream while his dream is murdering people in his name 3 counties over. Evan bursts in with a letter, practically vibrating, and shoves it at Alon so hard a golden blob of butter splats across the parchment. The letter reads, "Due to Leo Palladio's death, we request Alan Palladio's return." Alan's face does the math in real time. Brother dead. I am the heir. This is the opposite of the quiet country retirement I budgeted for. His expression is what every introvert looks like when asked to give a eulogy and a quarterly report on the same day. Leo's funeral is all solemn attendance and open casket, while the household staff tremble at Alon's arrival like he personally ordered the hit. The rumor mill has already convicted him, and the trial is scheduled for never. Evan confronts Alon in what looks like a shared hallucination and asks the question that will define their entire relationship. When did you become the Shadow Leader? Alon, genuinely broken, asks why he is the villain. This man outsourced 5 rescue missions and somehow became the final boss of his own family's succession arc without a single PowerPoint presentation. Evan lays out the prosecution's case. Alon is the only one who benefits. Leo died after they left, and Alon has the perfect alibi to become the Count's heir. The logic is airtight, the conclusion is wrong, and the comedy is immaculate. Evan delivers the finishing blow. With Leo's death, nothing will bother Alon anymore. Alon is so horrified the panel encases him in ice, which is the most accurate visual metaphor for realizing your life is now a true crime podcast about you. Evan tries to cheer him up by presenting a tuxedo with the energy of a stylist who has never read a room. Alon is stunned, and the costume change from rural hermit to grieving heir happens in one traumatic wardrobe reveal. Evan brings up the Blue Moon as a suspect, then immediately dismisses them because the Information Guild said they were not behind this. The Information Guild is wrong, and the irony is so thick you could spread it on Alan's toast. Alan smirks with metagame confidence and declares there is no way those weaklings are behind this, since the Blue Moon disappears before the original story starts. He is using wiki knowledge to investigate the cult that worships him, and the results are not going to age well. Cut to the actual Blue Moon inner circle in a storage room. Utia, Solrang, and Rhine are debriefing, and Rhine reports that nothing was left behind at the assassination scene. This is what operational excellence looks like when your boss is a red-eyed cardinal with attachment issues. Sailring grins with a dagger in hand and corrects her. There were only corpses. The cat-eared girl is having the time of her life, and that is the exact energy you want from your organization's morale officer. Deus stands in a mystical void with purple butterfly energy wings and a sword, and the visual confirms what the lore already promised. The sin of sloth has awakened, and he looks anything but lazy. Haidan reports to Utia with a crescent moon clasp gleaming on his cloak. Like you said, boss. The undercover agent has clocked out, and the boss who gave the order is very pleased with the quarterly results. Utia smiles with glowing red eyes and says one word, good. That single syllable contains more menace than most villains fit into a monologue, and she has not even unfolded her fan yet. Utia confronts Haidan in the storage room, and he presents a bound book found along with the Avalon-connected nobles. It is not a gift, it is evidence, and the Blue Moon is just getting started with the paperwork. A vision of Avalon-connected nobles with glowing white eyes appears, and the puppet network is now visible. This is not the only hand running people like chess pieces in this kingdom, just the one that will eventually do it with the best lighting. Utia unleashes her full wrath aura, pink hair and red energy filling the panel, while Sailrang and Deus face off with crackling yellow and purple power. The Blue Moon inner circle is doing a team-building exercise, and the exercise is violence. Haidan poses with a massive sword and glowing blue eyes like he is auditioning for the cover of a metal album, and honestly, the Blue Moon has the stage presence of a surprise comeback group. No fan chant needed, the screaming is involuntary. Rhine stands surrounded by glowing teal orbs in a star-filled void, and the Quiet One is doing her part with the kind of calm that says she has already cataloged everyone's weaknesses in triplicate. Utia's rage is the emotional headline, but the real story is that all 5 sins are now operating as a unit, and their unseen leader thinks they are sending him polite updates about Orphanage Craft Hour. We jump forward to the Blue Moon research session, where the topic is a hell sword made by a swordmaster. Utia grins while clutching a book, and the expression says she has already decided whoever owns this sword does not need it anymore. Seolrang and Deus face off again. Yellow lightning against purple void, with Rhine watching like a referee who has already written the post-match report. The team dynamic is tense, talented, and absolutely not OSHA compliant. A voice insists this was not an order, and then the panel cuts to a man preparing to strike while Utia watches in fear. The Blue Moon has internal disagreements about methodology, which is a polite way of saying they are one bad meeting away from a civil war. Utia falls through a void saying, "Remember this," and the line lands like a threat wrapped in a promise. Whatever she wants remembered, the audience is going to be paying for it later with interest. The group observes floating papers and concludes, someone knows everything. Macaulay, in his own mind, says he does not understand, which is the most honest thing a protagonist has admitted in this series so far. The narration notes that even someone with abilities as overwhelming as Utia's can feel anxiety and resentment, which is a gentle way of saying she is terrified of disappointing a man who does not know she exists. Back in the present, Alon collapses over his desk, crying that he just wants to loaf around and eat. He has inherited a county, survived an assassination by proxy, and his true ambition is still snack-based. Respect. He writes that Leo's death was supposed to be 6 years from now, and the scholars flooding in with books scatter when he glares at them. The staff are now working strictly because rumor says he is a secret mastermind, which is the worst workplace culture initiative ever implemented. Alon asks if the staff are working so hard because of the secret mastermind rumors, and the answer is yes. He has accidentally implemented a productivity program through fear, and he cannot even claim it was intentional. Training montage kicks in, and the narration explains that magic requires innate talent, a sentence that exists specifically to make Alon feel worse about his mana hall being the size of a studio apartment. Alon conjures a bright energy orb in a grand hall and practices channeling blue magic in a forest, and the visual says he is trying his best. The problem is that his best is being measured against people who were born with apocalypse-grade hardware. The metaphor lands hard. Innate mana capacity is like an athlete's natural weight class, and Alon's mana hall is very small. No amount of training will cover it, which is the most polite way the series has told him he is not the chosen one. Evan hands Alon a letter, and Alon's confused is the sound of a man who has not yet learned that mail is now his primary source of trauma. We arrive at the grand ball, where Alon and Evan walk into a tense confrontation in an opulent hall. Evan is carrying a tray of pastries because even during political warfare, his priorities remain refreshingly consistent. Alon looks troubled while the nobles dance around him, and the ballroom is doing that thing where everyone pretends they are not watching the man rumored to have murdered his way into a county. Alon tells Evan he will unlock the social skill he secretly practiced, bids him farewell, and walks into the crowd with the determination of someone who has never successfully unlocked anything social in his life. He approaches a noblewoman with wine and tells her he did not come thoughtlessly, then declares he will deploy his practiced gentle smile. The panel frames this like a horror movie jump scare, which is fair because that is exactly what it becomes. A gentle smile is an essential social tool, the panel insists, while Alon's grin looks like he is calculating her tax liability. The noblewoman recoils in terror because she has just been smiled at by a man whose reputation includes 2 dead brothers and a shadow cult. She promises to tell her father to prepare at once, and Alon reaches out in panic because he was only complimenting the wine. The social skill has backfired so hard she is now planning a defense budget. The nobles gossip that he just blackmailed them into giving him limited edition regional wine, and Evan lists the loot pile: Palladian luxury steed, Penia citrus tea, Volanda crafted metalwork, Malentino specialty wine. Alon came to make friends and accidentally ran a protection racket. Alon sighs that his social life is ruined, and the nobles feel even further away, which is objectively true because they are now physically fleeing his presence. The rumor that he removed his monstrous brothers has made him a social black hole in a ballroom. A red-haired woman sips wine and watches him with intense red eyes, and the camera lingers just long enough to say, "New player detected." She is not running. That alone makes her the most interesting person in the room. Alon steps onto the balcony for fresh air, and the night sky is doing its best to comfort him. It is not working, but the effort is noted by the cinematography department. Someone speaks to him, and Alon turns with the surprised expression of a man who forgot that other humans can initiate conversation. The social skill cooldown has not reset, and we are all nervous. A door bursts open, and Loria Altia is revealed, sitting pensively in a green dress with a green ribbon in her wavy brown hair. She is the youngest daughter of the Northern Troublemakers, and she has been waiting for exactly this moment. Alan recognizes the Altia name and greets her with the calm of a man who has just realized another quest marker has appeared on his face. He is sweating, but he is committed to the bit. Loria is introduced as one of the Northern Troublemakers, sitting before a mountain painting surrounded by red roses, looking sad enough to make the flowers feel overdressed. Alon sweats harder, because sad noblewomen at balls are historically where his life goes sideways. Loria tells Alon she does not appear anywhere in the game, and the butterfly effect just landed on his balcony wearing lace trim. If characters who were never in the script are now asking him for help, his foreknowledge has officially expired. A flashback shows a dark-eyed young man glaring at a blonde woman in green, and the Altia family dynamic is revealed to be exactly as dysfunctional as every other noble house in this kingdom. Loria blushes and starts to say she is going to be something, and the scene cuts to the sunset balcony again, letting the implication hang in the air like a chandelier no one wants to dust. The act closes on Chibi Alon reading, "Tips for socializing because the man who accidentally founded a shadow cult, inherited a county, and rewrote the timeline is now grinding the most underleveled skill in his entire build. Good luck, King. You're going to need it." We open this act on a young man with purple hair and a purple cloak, hands clasped like he's either praying or about to tell us the Wi-Fi password to the divine realm. But before we get to whatever cosmic customer service line Alon just dialed, we have to back up to the grand ball, where Loria Altia is looking at our protagonist with the exact expression you make when the only person who can save you is socially incompetent. Loria explains that Duke Altia's condition has worsened, and being the daughter of a mistress means her protection just expired like a trial subscription. She looks at Alon and essentially asks him to renew it with his rumored power. Alon, being the most honest coward in the kingdom, tells her he'll be taking his leave. Internally, he's doing the math. He can barely take care of himself. He has no idea where his own cult ends, and false hope is the one resource he is not qualified to distribute. Loria is left alone looking sad, and the scene transitions to Alon getting choked from behind, which is the narrative's way of saying every goodbye in this family comes with physical feedback. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the same ball, two cloaked figures are having the kind of conversation that makes a debutante ball feel like a war room. One of them confirms they will proceed according to the Red Moon's command, which means Utia is running operations from somewhere Alon cannot see. Alon wanders the empty ballroom floor, wondering if he has some kind of people-repelling barrier, which is technically correct, but not for the reason he thinks. He greets the red-haired woman who has been watching him, and she hides behind a fan with the energy of someone who already owns the next 3 moves. This is Kalia, and she greets Alon's social panic with the confidence of a woman who murdered her father and is now using him as a desk ornament. Alon compliments her beauty because when you are outmatched in every other department, you default to manners. The narration drops the world-building bomb. In this kingdom, there are 3 great shadow players, and we get the title card, Altia of the North, complete with a mystical rose blooming through crystalline shards. Then Kalia smiles with her fan, and the room temperature drops about 10 degrees. Utia is now on a throne, legs crossed, wearing red like she already owns the season. A young boy in a black uniform hides his face in surprise at her presence, which is the appropriate reaction when someone walks in with that much main character energy. She thanks Alon for the compliment, fan half covering a smile that says she would like to talk more, and Alon's internal monologue is just begging to be released from this conversation quietly. He is not going to be released quietly. Alon escapes to consult his Blue Moon cloaks, which is like calling tech support, except the technicians are also a doomsday cult. Deus and Utia report that there is a new concern, and Alon stands there holding a wine glass like it is the only shield he has. A cloaked figure gets hurled across the ballroom and falls through the void, because apparently the Blue Moon handles security breaches the same way they handle everything, with excessive force and no visible paperwork. Scene shift. Alon and Evan are standing in a forest clearing looking at glowing rune stones, and Evan asks if this is really the canyon they were looking for. Alon says he came here often, which is true if by often you mean he speedran this dungeon in a previous life. The Labyrinth of Whispers is revealed. 8 rooms, riddles in each, and a powerful artifact at the end. Alon looks at the entrance with the awe of someone who has seen this place rendered in low-poly graphics and is now experiencing the 4K remaster. His companion asks how he knows this place, and Alon deflects with, "I've come here often." The lie is so thin you could use it as a window, but nobody in this party has the energy to audit him. They enter the first riddle room, and the dungeon's answer to getting a question wrong is a demonic red monster, a dragon-like creature, and a colossal stone fist slamming down with the enthusiasm of a final exam proctor. Alon watches the carnage and calmly notes that getting the riddles wrong causes those things to slam down mercilessly. His companion asks how he can stay so calm, and the honest answer is that Alon has been emotionally desensitized by his own family dinners. Alon solves the riddle just before another shadowy fist descends, and the mechanism opens with the timing of a subway door that almost took your arm. They proceed deeper because retreat is not in the patch notes. The treasure room opens, and Alon looks pained because the reward room is so full of gold that not looking at it is a genuine athletic feat. A hand wearing a glowing golden ring reaches out from a room stacked with gold bars, which is the dungeon's way of saying, "Please, take the quest item and leave the economy alone." One companion points at the artifact and calls it the most useless-looking thing in the room, which is exactly the kind of assessment that gets you cursed in a dungeon. The taller figure advises taking nothing else, because greed is how side quests become main quests. Alon examines the golden coin with the black ring on his finger, and an older figure warns him from down the hall. The dungeon is not done with them, it is just letting them feel clever before the next encounter. Armored guardians appear in formation, spears ready, glowing visors doing that thing where you know they are not going to accept a verbal warning. The boss corridor has arrived, and nobody brought enough healing potions. Alon lunges at his glasses. Wearing companion, a figure in white robes stands in the void, and then the colossal stone golem drops in with a glowing red core and the kind of presence that makes you reconsider your build choices. A white-haired spear wielder attacks the golem, the stone giant shatters to reveal a glowing red symbol, and a warrior gets impaled mid-fight. The glasses companion screams that second-tier magic is not enough, which is the dungeon equivalent of your healer announcing they are out of mana. Alon is overwhelmed by blinding white energy, spectral figures swirling around him, and for a moment, the dungeon feels less like a video game and more like a job interview with a god. He hears a voice. Not a person. A voice. Capital V, cosmic reverb, the kind of audio cue that makes you save your game twice. Alon closes his eyes against a starfield background and stands alone before a stormy sky over dark water. Alon holds the golden artifact and thinks that the voice almost makes this world feel real, which is a heartbreaking sentence from a man who has been treating everything like a speedrun. A gray-robed figure says, "First." A cosmic entity commands, "Speak," and the void erupts with energy. Alon stands clasped hands in a stone chamber while a cosmic battle of light and dark tears open a nebula rift, and the voice pronounces, "Granted." He is praying in a misty void, and the prayer appears to be going through. Then, the voice says, "Second," and Alon falls backward in surprise, covering his face like he just got a system notification he did not opt into. A hexagonal emblem appears, hands forming a diamond around a mouth, which is either a spell icon or a very aggressive logo for a meditation app. A powerful energy vortex activates, and Alon thinks he must have messed up somewhere because he mimicked the exact skill icon just in case. This is what happens when you treat divine invocation like copying a dance choreo from a comeback stage. The intent is there, but the muscle memory is borrowed. He looks up desperately and says this has to work, and the word "granted" appears in glowing Gothic lettering against a purple nebula. A cosmic entity unleashes a torrent of white energy from its mouth, and the spell is no longer a request, It is a download completing. A young man with light-colored hair stands defiant against a swirling vortex of purple and white energy, and Alon clasps his hands, conjuring white swirling power with the golden brooch gleaming. Origin magic is now online, and the tutorial did not prepare anyone for this. Blue energy surges through the void. The glass's companion shouts that second-tier magic is not enough, and a warrior in dark robes strikes down the rock creature with a glowing red blade. The dungeon boss is learning that Alon's build has just been patched without his consent. Another figure prepares a glowing pink blade. Alon struggles to disarm the glass's wearer, and the close-up on Alon's intense gaze says he has stopped pretending he knows what he's doing and started improvising. A dark hand crackles with white lightning forming an orb. Alon, with striking black and white hair, manipulates blue energy streams while the glasses man recoils in terror, and the heavily built figure attacks with a chest glowing fierce red. Alon channels blue energy into a sphere, while a shadowy, imposing figure looms behind him, and then he fires his ultimate blue energy sphere at the dungeon boss. Chapter 6 ends on a cliffhanger, where the man who wanted to loaf around and eat is now casting spells that rewrite the local geology. Chapter 7 opens with the aftermath. A man screaming in anguish, a hooded figure engulfed in red aura, and two muscular warriors clashing amid blue energy. The dungeon is not over, it is just angry. Alon unleashes a glowing blue orb, then a torrent of bright blue lightning, reaching toward a radiant swirling aura with the focus of someone who has just discovered their credit card works in the divine realm. The energy blast erupts in blinding white light, filling the rocky cavern with crackling lightning and a sound effect the Korean edition gave 2 syllables. Whatever those syllables are, our protagonist is now intimately acquainted with their meaning through his sternum. A man in a dark cloak raises his hand toward the blinding light. A figure is engulfed in electric blue aura, and a massive stone fist descends toward a glowing blue orb. The boss tries to counter, but the boss did not read the patch notes. 2 figures stand atop a rocky outcrop surrounded by crackling blue energy, hands reaching up to direct the assault. The spell has become a team effort between Alon, his companion, and whatever ancient god is currently letting him borrow the Wi-Fi. A young man with purple-tinged white hair and sharp purple eyes unleashes a surge of blue energy, and the scene fills with blinding white and purple light. 2 figures are silhouetted against the discharge, their forms indistinct but very much committed to the bit. The taller figure stands protectively before the shorter armored one as lightning engulfs them, and then a final massive blast erupts. Alon's companion reacts with shock and fear because he just watched a second circle spell behave like a banned ultimate. A figure unleashes a torrent of blue lightning, their form distorted by the surge, while Alon and Evan stand facing a colossal shadowy entity crackling with purple lightning. The boss is still standing, but its posture has changed from threatening to concerned. The colossal stone figure cracks and crumbles under the lightning. A clenched fist erupts with blue energy, and an armored figure braces against a descending spear. The dungeon guardian is learning that Alon's second circle magic graduated without telling anyone. A figure in ornate armor wields a spear-like weapon unleashing blue energy, and the background fills with crackling lightning and explosive force. The Korean sound design team is earning their overtime on this sequence. Alon and Evan ascend a rocky chasm lit by glowing runes and a waterfall, then emerge stunned. Evan asks if that was really just second circle magic, and Alon admits it was not at all like that back in the game. The game mechanics have been overwritten by something older. Alon explains that the spell changed shape with each incantation and hand sign, and he could see those transformations because he is especially good at controlling mana. This is the first time his gamer precision has translated into actual magical aptitude, and he is as surprised as anyone. A cosmic voice speaks, "O human who remembers the gestures and mysteries of a forgotten god, I express my gratitude to you who inherit the will." Alon has not just learned a spell, he has been acknowledged by a deity who thought its own religion was dead. 2 figures clash amidst lightning in a desolate landscape, and then the disembodied voice finishes its pronouncement. Alon and Evan finally walk out of the sunlit forest clearing. Evan slumped with exhaustion after 3 weeks of trial that felt like 3 years of unpaid overtime. They rest by a waterfall, Evan leaning on Alan for support, and Alan acknowledges his good work for the past 3 weeks. It is a rare moment of sincere partnership between a man and the operative who has now witnessed him accidentally pray his way into god-tier magic. Alon explains that choosing a matching incantation enhances a spell's properties, and that he noticed the spell changing shape because of his mana control. He is essentially reading the patch notes of a forgotten god out loud and realizing he can apply them. A young man with short black hair and blue eyes casts a glowing orb while armored figures stand behind him, and then a surge of green lightning erupts. Alon is experimenting with incantation combinations, and the dungeon is now the test server. Alon thinks he can see the transformations because he is especially good at controlling mana, and the two prepare to mount their horses in an enchanted forest. But before they can leave, a cloaked figure descends from the sky, and another, with glowing green eyes, looks up. A woman in a teal dress walks through a glowing cavern, and a light green braided woman examines an ancient stone rune tablet. Kalia and Bianca have arrived at Alon's estate, which means the social event Alon just escaped is about to arrive at his front door with better intelligence and worse intentions. An in-world legend appears, the one who stopped the invasion of the Black Things, showing a knight in shining armor confronting a colossal dragon. The story is titled The Brilliant Emperor and takes place in a mystical library, because even the flashbacks in this series have production value. A grand library pulses with bright white energy surrounded by floating books, and a green-haired woman casts a spell. Kalia watches Alon and notes that a bloody queen follows him, something one could only find in history. She has identified Utia's spectral presence, which is the worst possible thing for Alon's privacy. Alon and a light-haired companion unleash a massive lightning blast at a colossal jagged form of crackling energy and rock. The man with teal hair looks down somberly because even after all that power, the real boss is still the schedule. Blue Moon operatives converge at night. A green-haired girl admits she is embarrassed to be blindly following orders. A silver-haired woman greets an arriving cloaked figure, and a young man with purple glowing eyes reports that the Dark One is dead. Bleo's assassination is now official internal news. Hidden, or Alman, or Haydn, whichever name he is wearing this season, delivers the verdict: the Dark One is dead. A young agent walks through a blood-splattered landscape, and blue orbs ascend into the night sky. The chapter closes on a serene forest dawn, because the blue moon knows how to end a meeting with atmosphere. Nobles observe Alon from a distance, describing him as chillingly emotionless with eyes like the abyss. Kalia visits her father's study and asks if that is not fascinating, and he replies that she is the count here. The dynamic is clear, he writes, she rules, and neither of them is happy about the arrangement. Kalia's father writes with a quill, and then black smoke emerges as Kalia smiles with glowing red eyes. A dark-robed figure with a red glowing sword strikes, and Kalia stands sealed in a pink energy field. She is controlling her father through black magic, which is one way to handle a difficult parent. Her father lunges at her in rage while she remains serene and smug, touching her lips with a finger like she just tasted a secret. The puppet count is having a tantrum, and the puppeteer is enjoying the show. Kalia attends a formal event and tells a military-uniformed young man that there are too many eyes on them right now. A servant calls for Miss Kalia, and the scene is interrupted by a shambling, lesion-covered figure lunging in a futuristic chamber. The monstrous figure lunges, and Kalia debriefs with the military man. The perpetrator's seal did not activate, so he did not reveal the secret. A pink-haired woman asks how they figured it out, smug as a snake in a garden. Kalia is under counter-surveillance, and the game just added another faction to the board. Meanwhile, Alon and Evan sit in a dim room, one poking his ear bored, the other lying on the floor, completely unaware that Kalia has just reverse-engineered his cult's protection detail and declared the surrounding county her chessboard. The gap between what Alon knows and what is happening in his name has never been wider, and that is saying something for the show. We need to talk about the note. Not the wine, not the chessboard, not the glowing white eyes, the note. Because somewhere between Alon writing "I'd like to send you letters sometimes" and Utia pressing it to her chest like a holy relic, the patch notes for this entire world got rewritten. But first, the Altia family. The carriage rolls up to the ducal estate, and inside, Loria Altia is smiling like someone who has already read the spoiler thread. She looks out at the palace and thinks of Alon with those cold, calculating eyes, her mind already casting him as the only shield that matters. At the ball, her brothers and sisters stand together like a perfectly posed family portrait. Timalian with his fur-trimmed cloak, Malianne with her long blonde hair, Pyrine and Kig looking every bit the noble heirs. And little Loria sits apart, saying the most devastating thing a youngest daughter can say at a party, "I have nothing." Then the doors creak open and the night detonates. A maid screams Loria's name as something pulls her into the dark. Loria turns, sees blood on the floor, and the only question she can manage is, what? Because her brain has not yet caught up to the fact that the family purge has started without a warning email. She weeps for Timalian and Malianne, and the answer arrives before anyone can lie to her. They are impaled together in the grand hall, embracing even as they die, surrounded by shattered glass and that thorny purple tree motif that screams, this was always going to happen. Loria watches from behind the curtain and asks the void, what in the world is going on? The void does not answer. Blue Moon does. Bladon, Radon, Silver Moon, the pirate who is somehow already on the board, grins through the chaos and declares successfully eliminated. That is the coldest three-word performance review in Dougal history. The sword falls. The castle stands silent under snow, and the Altea succession just got fast-tracked by a man who really enjoys his job. In the aftermath, someone kneels over a body and whispers, "Good things will happen," which is the kind of lie you tell right before you become the villain of someone else's story. Loria walks away from her maids, stands at the window, and laughs once, a single ha that contains every pact, with the devil energy this show can legally hold. 2 months later, a messenger arrives at Alan's door under Duke Altea's order. Alan, who definitely did not plan on becoming the Count, opens a box and finds an exquisite wine with a card, "With Respect," by Loria Altea. And his first thought is, not good wine. It is, why did she send me this? Followed immediately by the guilt that he was not able to help her. Meanwhile, Loria is no longer the girl sitting apart at the ball. She is the Duchess Altea, writing at her desk with the focus of someone who has buried her siblings and inherited their ambition along with their titles. She stretches, surveys her domain, and hopes he liked her gift of gratitude. He has no idea what he is being thanked for. The new player on the board is exactly what this story needed. A smug man in a fur-collared coat sitting on a pile of gold coins with a cigar, wondering what he has that Alan does not. Across from him, Loria stands alone on a chessboard of fallen pieces, the only one left standing after Blue Moon flipped the table. Back at the manor, Alan stares out at the snow and sighs, the sigh of a man who has been promoted against his will. His internal rulebook for a sweet life in psychedelia is simple. Avoid the succession war, settle in Rodnell, go on a gourmet journey. Every single item on that list is now in ruins, and the ruins have a very nice view. Evan and another aide ask if he has any information on Leo's assassins, and Alan, sitting in his library like a man who has accepted that the plot is now driving him, decides that every deviation from the original game is probably a butterfly effect he caused. So he will just prepare for unexpected events. That is the entire plan. Prepare for unexpected events. The strategy of a man who has seen the patch notes and knows the devs are trolling him. Then the letter from Yudia arrives, and the act remembers its heart. She writes that everyone is doing okay, Yudia writes. Deus does puppet shows, Seal Rang plays in the park, Ryan reads quietly while making things, and Radan tends his garden. Alan has never seen their faces, but reading about them growing well warms him more and more each time. This is the closest he gets to being a father, and he does not even know their names are mythology in training. And then the letter lists their talents. Utia has the talent of faith. Deus has the talent of the sword. Rhine has the talent of studying. Sailrang has the talent of a fighter, and Radan has the talent of an apostle. These are not hobbies. These are job postings for the apocalypse, and Alan reads them like a proud parrot reviewing a kindergarten report card. He throws his hands up and celebrates. What a perfect plan. He decides to prepare individual gifts for each of them, because that is what a kind uncle does. He also privately wonders if he can get something back once they become huge, because that is what a former corporate slave does. The letters take flight like birds toward the orphanage, carrying with them the exact kind of casual affection that Utia will later frame in a museum. The letters land. Utia stands somberly in a storage room. Someone announces that this time he delivered them individually. The 5 children gather, holding their letters in shock. Deus cries, "Yay!" Seal rang beams with her letter held high. And in that small room, 5 future world-ending weapons are happy because their favorite person remembered them separately. That is the note. That is the cult. That is the whole show. We open on the capital of Caliburn at sunset, which is exactly the kind of place where a child raised on orphanage puppet shows becomes the kingdom's most terrifying knight. But rewind. The Blue Moon Inner Circle has just received fresh sealed letters, and everyone is reacting like they just got comeback photocards from their alt bias. Seal Rang is vibrating with joy. Ryan is examining hers like an appraisal item, and Utia holds her envelope with the smug serenity of someone who already knows its scripture. The rest of them are staring at these letters like it's a group project, and only one person read the rubric. They can't even tell their orders. Then Utia reveals the truth. The master disguised all his instructions as ordinary conversations from the very beginning. Which means Alon's casual anxiety ramblings have been top-secret directives this whole time. Deus asks the reasonable question. If leaks are the problem, why use letters at all? Utia's face says that is not the kind of doubt the Red Moon tolerates. Meanwhile, Seorang just shouts order and accepts her mission like a golden retriever getting a tennis ball. The bar for cult loyalty is on the floor, and these children are doing limbo under it. The assignments drop. Deus gets Caliburn, the nation of knights. Solrang gets Colony and immediately stages a one-woman protest about deserts. Ryan and Laden get what looks like a treasure haul errand. And Utia clutches her paper to her chest like it's a handwritten love letter, which to her, it absolutely is. One of them adds that the patronage will continue, because even doomsday weapons need an allowance. The master also included gift locations because nothing says shadow conspiracy like a scavenger hunt with prizes. They stand together for one last moment, 5 kids who are supposed to destroy kingdoms, now splitting up to run Alon's accidental empire. Cut to Alon, completely detached from all of this, sitting in a study full of books and muttering that he'll have to experiment with the magic himself. He thinks he's researching a spell. The Blue Moon thinks he's issuing divine marching orders, same paperwork, 2 completely different patch notes. Evan reports that the Information Guild has found nothing on Leo's assassin. Alan flashes back to that spectral blonde woman in the icy landscape, which is either trauma or a very aggressive screensaver. Evan suggests they stop investigating entirely. Alon agrees, because in this economy, ignorance is the only luxury he can still afford. He reasons it out like a true corporate survivor. The Information Guild sees almost everything, and there's no reason for the assassin's faction to attack him unless he approaches them first. This is sound risk management. It is also exactly the kind of logic Utia will interpret as a masterstroke of strategic restraint. Then Caliburn's crest appears, and Alon is suddenly in a formal hall being stared down by a military official who outranks his entire bloodline. Later, over street skewers, Evan casually mentions that Deus got appointed a knight. Alon nearly chokes. It has not been that long. Deus was a child. Children do not become knights in healthy organizations. Chibi Alon is proud for exactly half a second before Evan clarifies the terminology. Derivation is the superhuman ability beyond Aura Blade. Deus has not just become a knight. Deus has become a swordmaster. Alon's face is the face of a man who sent a child to night camp and got back a final boss. The flashback hits. Deus is out here lunging at monsters, swinging a sword the size of his entire personality, and fighting alongside some fiery red-haired swordmaster who looks like he was accepted as a temporary comrade and excluded after the episode ends. Caliburn has been at war for more than a decade, and Deus has been treating it like a speedrun. Alon is still processing that a child with no sword background has become a master knight. He debates whether to act, which for him means doing absolutely nothing while sweating. Evan hands him more letters and a gift note. The gift note is not for Alon, it is from Alon. He wrote it and forgot, which is the closest thing he has to a long-term strategy. He complains that they could at least thank him for the gift, then immediately gets slapped back to training basics by Evan. The two stand by a sunlit window, one exhausted operative and one oblivious count, both equally unprepared for what Deus is about to find. Back in Caliburn, the cathedral stands tall. Soldiers line up like they are waiting for a twice-fan chant, and a lone figure in dark purple armor gazes out from the grand hall. That is Deus Macalian now, the sin of sloth. Purple Moon, Master Knight. He looks like he belongs on a poster, and he has absolutely no idea his next errand is a family reunion. Then the episode flashes back to how he got here. Young Deus, clutching someone as dark tendrils erupt around them. Falling. Reaching. Crying in a prison cell with nothing but a golden object in despair. Until Yudia descends from the sky like the best thing that ever happened to him, and promises he can take revenge with his own hands if he follows the blue moon. So he followed. Through dangerous missions, through training that should have killed him, through every battlefield Caliburn threw at him, not because he wanted glory, because Utia promised him the one thing nobody else could, his own hands, his own revenge, and a place in something bigger than his suffering. Then the gift note arrives. A small hotel in southern Caliburn. Alon left a gift there. Deus walks in wondering what could possibly be waiting, and the answer is a young woman with long brown hair and a broom who looks at him like the world just tilted back into place. That is Silly McCallion, the family he thought he had lost forever. And she breaks down crying because the family she thought she had lost forever is more precious than her life. Meanwhile, Alon is probably eating a sweet potato somewhere, completely unaware that his charity scavenger hunt just restored a sibling bond he did not know existed. That is the note. That is the cult. That is the whole show. 6 months later, and the orphanage is thriving so hard, it has developed a basement religion. But before we get to the cult meeting, Deus McCallion walks into a small Caliburn inn and finds the gift Alon left him, a sister he thought was dead. Silly McCallion, who collapses into his arms like every reunion scene that ever made a grown man cry in public. They share a quiet meal, they share tears, and Deus finally gets to exist as something other than a weapon for exactly one meal, because this show does not let anyone rest. Then the flashback hits, and we remember why Deus needed this so badly. The ornate cage, the girl suspended in ruins, the destroyed hall, the purple-haired woman falling just out of reach. Crimson energy, dark tendrils, a figure in purple and gold robes exploding into divine light, and a hand reaching through the void to catch someone who has already been falling for years. This is the standard Deus backstory, and it is not gentle. More flashback. A torrent of crimson power overwhelming a woman in white, a black armored figure swallowed by dark energy, and the kind of sword slash that leaves a permanent mark on the audience. Blinding white light cuts the darkness. 2 glowing blades clash. A cloaked figure gets blasted backward, and Deus protects a woman from an attacker in a ruined landscape. Every panel is screaming that this man learned violence before he learned peace. And Alon's gift note just handed him the second one. Back in the present, Silly stands beside Deus and says she is grateful for what Alon did for her, and Deus clutches his shoulder because the cost of his past is still billing him in installments. Cut to Yudia in a puzzle piece void, grinning like she just solved the board, and she asks the question that defines this entire operation. A sword can't think for itself, can it? Which is her polite way of saying Deus is Alon's blade, and Alon does not even know he owns a cutlery set. Young Deus cries with glowing purple eyes. Silly reads the word brothers like it is a prayer. Alon pats a child's head in a memory he does not know is sacred, and a man with a purple glowing sword stands in a dark mystical realm, all of it orbiting the same absent center. Alon meditates in a storage room like a man trying to debug his own mana bar. Silly brings Deus food with the kind of smile that rebuilds people, and Utia declares with absolute devotion, "May I follow that man?" While Alon stares forward with glowing purple eyes that suggest he is not in on the sermon. Then we see what Deus has become. An armored knight in a grand hall, masked soldiers in formation, 2 warriors walking a barren land, and young men in blue uniforms standing at attention. This is Caliburn, the nation of knights, and it has absolutely no idea what it just adopted. Deus's formal investiture. A dark, angular figure grips a glowing purple sword. A black-gloved hand takes the oath, and Deus stands in full ornate armor with a purple cape, while an army marches through snow, and a younger version of him relaxes in a courtyard surrounded by books. The sin of sloth became a master knight, and the irony is not lost on anyone except Alon. Meanwhile, Alon is in his study, surrounded by glowing books and sticky notes, muttering that he is going to write better from now on because cursive has personally offended him. He thinks he is researching a spell, but the cult is reading it as a quarterly divine memo. Magic training flashback. A pale hand crackles with cyan energy. A teal-haired young man channels green light. A blonde figure raises his hand to command power. And the caption drops the spell name, Blue Light, like it is a limited edition photocard pull. A swarm descends. A muscular man moves with purple lightning. A figure teleports inside an electrical explosion, and Alon sits in an armchair reading while books scatter across the table. The gap between theoretical magic and applied chaos has never been this funny. Alon conjures purple lightning in a hall, touches hands with crackling energy, and unleashes a blue-white blast in a city setting while lightning splits the storm sky. He is not training magic anymore. He is speedrunning a Thunder God build with no save points. The training peaks. An energy sphere explodes into lightning. Alon braces as a massive ethereal construct crackles with white arcs in his courtyard, and a green light blast erupts that probably violates several zoning laws. Then the word breakdown flares in golden light, followed by multiple energy surges, lightning storms, and a teal-haired figure completing the blue light and breakdown combo. Alon has officially named his advanced technique like a K-pop title track, and the choreo hits different. Reverse. Heaven fills the courtyard with blue energy. A figure is engulfed in aura, and Alon stands caught in the blast like a man who just realized his second circle spell has opinions. This is origin magic, and it does not come with a user manual. Bianca opens this act screaming like a man who just discovered the protagonist's hobby is a federal offense, and honestly, fair. He has seen Awan's lightning and his brain is filing it under origin magic, 7 circle mage. Why did nobody update the seating chart? Rewind a few panels, and the courtyard is already having a bad day. Blue energy is erupting everywhere. Korean sound design is doing overtime, and Alon is standing in the middle of it like he just microwaved a metal fork. Alon squints through the lightning and finally lands on a discovery that should have been obvious. The order of the incantation matters, which means magic in this world has the same energy as a twice comeback track list. You cannot just shuffle it and hope the choreo hits. The teal-haired assistant calmly explains that when he used breakdown first, the spell failed entirely. This is the kind of beta testing feedback every mage needs, and the kind of sentence that makes Alon realize he has been brute-forcing divine tier sorcery like it was a forgotten password. Somebody in the room shouts that this is impossible, which is exactly what you say right before the story proves it is mandatory. Alon's magic is not following the syllabus, it is writing its own. Alon stands there with a visible question mark where his composure used to be. He has the face of a man who just learned his basic lightning trick is actually a lost god language, and he has been fluent in it for weeks without noticing. The energy barrier is still doing its thing across the courtyard arches, while 2 very unwelcome guests stand in the background watching Alon like he is a stage they did not buy tickets for. The vibe has shifted from training montage to unscheduled performance review. Bianca is gripping Kalia's shoulder with the energy of a man whose entire worldview just got patched without warning. Kalia, meanwhile, looks like she is filing this moment under useful and possibly mine later. Alon's face finally catches up to the situation. Wide eyes, sweat drop, the full visual grammar of a protagonist who thought he was farming side quests and just got flagged as a raid boss. And then the line drops. Why is Kalia here? It is not a greeting. It is a man watching his quiet countryside arc get invaded by the main plot, and he is absolutely right to be alarmed. Bianca stands there in his dark pinstripe suit with an eagle brooch that screams, "I have opinions about wine and tax evasion," and the background is cracked like the set design is matching his emotional state. Alon repeats the word origin, with the exact intonation of someone who just found out their casual hobby qualifies them for a professional license they never applied for. The numbered boxes floating behind him are not helping. They look like a tutorial pop-up he skipped. So now Alon is standing in front of a glowing, ethereal tree in his own courtyard, with Kalia and Bianca watching from the pillars like they are judging his divine awakening on a 10-point scale. The grass is too green. The light is too blue. Nothing about this says normal Tuesday. Somebody asks, me? And the answer is yes, unfortunately. The universe has selected Alon for greatness again, and Alon would like to speak to the manager. Transition panel. Purple gradients, wavy lines, the visual equivalent of the narrator taking a breath before dropping the next emotional bomb. Then the flashback cuts hard to Caliburn, where a stout older king is on his knees begging young Deus not to leave for another country. "You are so talented. You are mine," he pleads, and Deus just kneels there with his head bowed like a man who has already decided his loyalty belongs to a letter, not a crown. So while Alon is panicking about being called a seventh circle mage, the swordmaster he accidentally raised is already so devoted that foreign monarchs are begging in vain. He wanted to save the world. He never realized he was building a new one. The great moon has spoken. Alon is asleep with a sweet potato in his hand. The note that started a cult has a lot to answer for. The sky just made a sound that rhymes with crack and carries enough kinetic energy to delete your save file permanently. A blue-skinned titan looms over the battlefield, grinning with a single glowing pink eye that screams, "I am not supposed to be here yet." Utia turns to face the abyss, her silver ponytail snapping like a warning flag, because apparently today is the day we break the timeline. But before the gods crash the party, let's rewind to the barbarians who believed death in combat was the highest honor imaginable, until they got tricked by a knight. The barbarian chief Kulkan swings his axe with righteous fury, only to realize the Caliburn knight has no intention of fighting fair, leaving him bleeding and betrayed. Delman's Caliburn knights finished the job with a poisoned, dishonored blade, leaving the great chief Kulkan to bleed out on the frozen tundra, his fury aimed not at defeat, but at the cowardice that stole his warrior's death. Seorang stands at the edge of a cliff, golden mane snapping in the wind, and announces to the whole desert that playtime is officially over. She calls herself the Great Moon's beneficiary, which is sweet until you remember the Great Moon is currently stress-eating sweet potatoes and has no idea any of this is happening. Rewind. Kalaya of Zenonia has parked herself on Alon's sofa like she owns the deed, and her elderly wizard Bianca is vibrating hard enough to qualify as a household appliance. Bianca whips out a detection spell that probably cost more than this mansion, because Kalia wants to know exactly what caliber of organization is propping up the third Palacio sun. Kalaya clocks Bianca's fear and flatly says she's never seen him like this, which is the wizard equivalent of your antivirus having an emotional breakdown. Alon strolls in with the social energy of a man who would rather be literally anywhere else, including the afterlife, and offers Kalia some polite deflection with a side of tea. Kalia tries to categorize his magic, and Alon responds with the kind of vague humility that accidentally sounds like a supervillain confirming his power set. Bianca being polite is so unprecedented that Kalia visibly short-circuits, because her butler's default setting is condescension with a monocle. Alon wraps the meeting with the energy of a Zoom call he never wanted, suggests Kalia visit Duke Altea, and sends her off before she can ask follow-up questions he cannot answer. Kalia curtsies and leaves, and Bianca immediately informs her there's no way Zenonia would ever visit Altea, which is wizard speak, for "I am deeply terrified," and changing the subject. Kalia presses him on whether that was origin magic, and Bianca denies it so fast his monocle fogs up, which is how you know it absolutely was origin magic. In the carriage, Bianca finally lets himself think about what he sensed, and his brain immediately starts rendering blue-white storms, an ethereal tree, and enough crimson void to stock a metal album cover. He watches Alon's lightning fixate and manifest into a tree of raw principle, and realizes this is the kind of magic you do not detect without a therapist on speed dial. Bianca screams internally, slaps a suppression spell on his own brain, and decides that continuing to think about this is a health hazard. Kalia smiles like a woman who has just read the terms and conditions and found the clause that says she is now a game piece. She looks up at a spectral giant Alon looming over a miniature board and quietly accepts the obvious: she has already become his pawn. Back at the estate, Evan delivers an intelligence report, and Alon processes it with the calm of a man who is about to have the worst afternoon of his life. Alon clutches his head and panics out loud about an alliance between two masterminds that could topple the entire Asteria kingdom, which is hilarious because one of those masterminds is him, and he does not know it. He sits down and writes Kalia a conciliatory letter apologizing for being blunt and cold, then dispatches it through the machinery guild like a man trying to defuse a bomb he accidentally armed. After all that diplomacy, Alon finally lets himself worry about Seolrang and Ladon, the two orphans he hasn't heard from in a while. The camera lingers on a golden-clawed gauntlet, which is the universal visual shorthand for your quiet orphan has found the legendary power-up you did not authorize. Cut to Sailrang walking through a desolate inner world, stretching like she just woke up from a nap, and hoisting the essence of the Golden Mane tribe while shouting her thanks to the great moon. Utia's red eyes briefly appear in the void, because of course she is watching, and a flashback shows the Golden Mane tribe gathered around their matriarch like this was always part of somebody's plan. Sealrang explains that the essence grants strength and authority to those who pass all the inner world's trials, which is a very polite way of saying she just speed-ran the difficulty curve. She stands in a golden vortex and declares that the great moon is her benefactor, which remains true even though the benefactor in question is currently drafting apology letters and not paying attention. Sealrang's golden flash erupts fully. Massive golden claws tear through the frame, and she announces that, from here on out, things are going to be different. She releases a blast that redecorates the landscape, then stands alone on a cliff overlooking the mountains with the confidence of someone who just unlocked her final class upgrade. And just as Seorang smiles and says, "Let's begin," a single golden eye opens in the darkness. Sion Asteria has noticed her, which means our patron's newest guardian just became the main event on someone else's radar. The eye of the follower just hit 248/50, and the resulting light is bright enough to make you forget what color the room used to be. Back at the estate, Alon is reviewing an intelligence report on Sealrang's golden flash, squinting at the page like the name is on the tip of his tongue, but his brain is refusing to cooperate. Evan, in full chibi wisdom mode, just shrugs and says, "You can be anything in that land if you've got the strength," which is a very polite way of admitting he has no idea what a golden flash is either. Alon then learns that the item he needs to patch his tiny mana hole is a month-long carriage ride away at the Blue Magic Tower, and his face goes so blank that the furniture starts to worry. Meanwhile, in Labyrinth City, Larthania, the job of official magic appraiser has become so prestigious that it basically prints money, which explains why Ryan Groff is running a shop called Murday while wearing a green crescent moon masquerade mask. A client brings in a golden lantern, and Ryan appraises it with the kind of casual competence that makes you forget she's one of the 5 apocalyptic weapons Alon is trying to keep busy with hobbies. She tells the client the lantern now runs for an hour on a bit of mana, then slips into her backroom laboratory the moment nobody is looking, because the real project is not decorative lighting. Ryan pulls out the eye of the follower, which is currently sitting at 247/5500 and looks like a golden eyeball that has been judging her entire life. She explains, mostly to herself, that she needs to awaken this thing to fight the black things, which is the sort of sentence that sounds reasonable until you remember she is a reincarnated divine weapon in a dress shop. The counter ticks over to 248/500, blinding white light erupts, and Ryan smiles like a woman who just unlocked the final tier of her build while everyone else is still reading the tutorial. She says she was born with the Library of Eternity, which is a very humble way of announcing that her passive skill tree is now online and aimed at cosmic threats. Utia appears out of nowhere holding a telescope, admitting she never understood why Ryan becoming an appraiser was part of the plan against the black things, which tells us Utia is watching everyone and understanding almost none of it. 3 weeks later, Alon's carriage finally rolls up to the Blue Magic Tower, a building so aggressively gothic that it looks like it filed a noise complaint against the sky. Fenia Christine greets him with all the warmth of a customer service chatbot at 3 a.m., announcing she is the Vice Tower Master, a 6th Circle mage, and very busy. Alon internally panics because he knows that in the game, Fenia becomes an 8th Circle Tower Master at age 20, then calmly introduces himself as Count Palladio like he did not just Google her entire career in his head. Then Utia descends into the hall in a surge of blue-white energy, and Evan whispers that she's terrifying, and that's just her mana, which is the kind of observation you make right before you update your will. Alon, however, walks straight through the vortex with the expression of a man who has been late to his own funeral before and did not enjoy it. In private, Phineas sizes him up and decides he's either the county mastermind or an incompetent man who got lucky, then settles on the latter with the confidence of someone who has not read the patch notes. Cut to Udia and a gray-haired man in a dark purple coat standing before a massive glowing fissure in the tower stonework, and Yudia has one tear running down her cheek because the timeline is officially off script. Alan's blue magic circle activates. A red energy beam erupts, and glowing red rune characters fill the frame like the universe just sent him a push notification he did not sign up for. The act ends with Utia standing alone in dark red cardinal robes under a crimson sky, looking like the patron's guardian who just realized the patron has no idea he's being guarded. Our man Alan is staring into the middle distance with the kind of exhausted expression you get after a toddler explains cryptocurrency to you. But before the sweet potato incident, we have to deal with Utia, who has cornered him in what I can only describe as a void with commitment issues. She whips out absolute silence, which is less a spell name and more a description of every family dinner I've ever attended, and Alan's internal monologue is basically, "Please do not turn me into a sermon." The magic circle does its whole geometric light show, and Udia capitulates with the enthusiasm of someone accepting a terms of service update she did not read. She tells him, enlightenment is poison, which is rich coming from the woman who built a global shadow organization around a post-it note he once sent her. Utia's eye glows like a router trying to reconnect to God, and she finally agrees to whatever Alan demanded, though her face says she is filing this under evidence of divinity. A magic circle flares between them, and somewhere in the universe, a relationship counselor just got a new case file. Cut to the Blue Magic Tower, where Fenia Christine is processing Alan's explanation that he only used random magic a few more times. Fenia's response is immediate and unhinged in the healthiest possible way. She swears she is incredible at keeping secrets, with the energy of someone who has never been trusted with one before. Alan looks at her like she has just offered to hide a body, and honestly, given the tower's research ethics, that might be on the table. Fenia then produces 5 homemade mana potions and casually mentions 2 of them. Alone are worth an entire mansion, which is the most aggressive thank you gift a second circle mage has ever received for doing absolutely nothing. She suggests a mana oath, and Alan's expression says he would rather be oath-bound to a parking ticket, but he rolls with it because Fenia is spiraling in a direction he cannot control. Glowing blue chains erupt from the floor and wrap around both of them. And I need you to understand, this is not a kink thing. This is legally binding silence. Fenia immediately celebrates like she just won a fan meet, and Alan realizes he has accidentally collected another person who will misinterpret his breathing patterns as divine prophecy. Alan and Evan hit the road, and Alan admits that Fenia's reaction felt weirdly similar to Kalia's, then shrugs it off because he assumes he will never see either of them again. That assumption is, of course, adorable, because this man has the social karma of a black hole, and these women have his address. Utia waves goodbye with the cheerfulness of a cult leader sending her messiah off to a business trip, and Alan wonders if she is making fun of him, which she absolutely is, but not in the way he thinks. Meanwhile, at the Altea Ducal house, Loria is hosting Kalia with the kind of polite tension you get when 2 women who have both been outmaneuvered by the same man try to have tea. Kalia reveals Alan sent her what she calls a coded apology letter, using the day she visited as a pretext, and explains that he dislikes both the aristocratic and royalist factions. Loria processes this with the expression of someone who just realized her entire political career was CC'd into existence by a man who thinks faction politics are a group project he did not sign up for. Kalia sips her tea and confirms the obvious. Alan made Loria Duchess because he needs the prestige and political cover of the Altea name. Loria has her big moment, looking up like the heavens just sent her a LinkedIn endorsement, and declares that this is why he elevated her. Kalia nods along with the confidence of a woman who has also decided Alan is playing 4-dimensional chess, when in reality he is just trying to avoid eye contact at parties. The 2 of them sit there agreeing like they have cracked the code, while the actual code is just a man who wanted to write a polite email and go back to bed. Alan glances back with a faint smile, completely unaware that he has just been crowned the architect of 2 duchesses in a criminal county, and frankly he looks too tired to care. He leaves a political storm behind him with the same energy I leave. A group chat when it gets too active. Back at the Blue Magic Tower, the actual Tower Master has returned, and Fenia is bowing like she has been caught running a side hustle in the lab. Bianca corners her and demands an explanation, and Phinia cannot say a word because the mana oath is doing its job with terrifying efficiency. Cut to Alon by a campfire, stuffing his face with sweet potatoes, and he chokes so hard Evan has to hand him water, like this is a toddler's first solid food. We get a quick cut to Ryan Groff standing in a field of crosses under a floating crescent moon, which is exactly the kind of aesthetic you would expect from a reincarnated divine weapon running an appraisal shop. Then Utia in her grand cardinal hall, surrounded by white lilies and soft light, looking serene enough to make you forget she once turned a courtyard into a crime scene over a letter. Bianca, still vibrating, tells Phinia that the eyes Alon revealed only appear around the 6th circle or by birth, which is wizard speak, for that man is either a prodigy or a problem, and I am betting on both. 3 armored men stand in a courtyard with their swords glowing like they just got the group text that the world is ending, and honestly, they're not wrong. The caption tells us that artifacts bestowed under the name of the goddess Cunea once shone bright in this knight's hands, proving the divine power he had, which is a very fancy way of saying he used to be the teacher's pet of heaven. Now he's asking why anyone told him to believe in the moon instead, and a hooded figure in white robes answers with the kind of theological pivot that would get her excommunicated in a lesser denomination. Utia smiles and says, "The goddess is also the moon herself," which is the kind of sentence that sounds spiritual until you remember this woman built a global shadow cult around a post-it note from a man who eats sweet potatoes. The knight bows so deeply his forehead could file taxes. A brilliant white light erupts to seal the conversion, and Utia stands there in full nun cosplay looking like the patron's guardian just clocked in for her shift. We'll circle back to how we got here. Right now, Tower Master Salim Macardo returns to the Blue Magic Tower, an 8th circle mage who looks like he just finished a business trip and is already regretting walking through the door. Phinia Christine greets him with the dazed energy of someone who has been running a magic tower solo and also carrying a secret that physically cannot leave her mouth. Bianca immediately notices Phinia is not yelling at him like usual, which for their relationship is basically a 5-alarm fire, and he asks what serious thing happened with the concern of a man whose pension is tied to this woman's sanity. Phinia is slumped over her desk, looking like she mainlined 3 potions and a guilt trip, and Bianca laughs awkwardly about his long northern trip, while Phinia silently contemplates the mana oath wrapped around her soul like a contractual snake. Bianca gets right to it and asks if she made an oath that prevents her from explaining exactly how Alon used his magic, and Phinia's silence is so loud, the test tubes in the background start vibrating. Then Bianca drops the line that echoes through the whole tower, or should I say, the origin magic, complete with a smug little ooh afterward, because nothing says, "I solved it," like a wizard who has been right for 5 seconds. Meanwhile, Alon is at his estate, blowing up a stone structure with glowing blue energy and taking notes like a graduate student whose thesis just set the lab on fire. He walks through the crater with Evan, who is eating pastries and observing that the Count's magic sure is interesting, which is the kind of understatement you make when your boss just invented a new branch of physics by accident. Alon spends 3 days sculpting a tiny clay figure, turns on a lamp labeled "of shining knowledge," and generally behaves like a man who is one hobby away from opening an Etsy shop for disaster mages. He presents a phrase, array research chart to Evan, and concludes that power only increases gradually, so there's no reason for his magic's firepower to spike suddenly, a sentence that is technically true and also completely wrong. Alon mutters that none of this makes sense, and the mystery of his growing power hangs there unresolved, which is classic protagonist behavior. The man has a stat increase he did not authorize, and a research chart that cannot explain it. Hard cut to the East Prayer House in the Holy Kingdom of Rosario, where Utia Blutia appears in full cardinal robes, white hair and a bun, looking like the holiest thing in a building specifically designed to look holy. A blonde knight asks if she's been well, and Utia smiles with that red-eyed serenity that has launched 1,000 heresies, because this is not a wellness check. This is a recruitment meeting with cosmic stakes. She tells the knight he executed the good deeds and taught her, an ignorant one, which is hilarious because Utia is a 1,000-year-old sin of wrath pretending to be a humble novice for the emotional leverage. The knight's guilt is laid bare. He fell for a moment's temptation and put his faith in the moon instead of the goddess. And he is so desperate he is willing to do anything, which is exactly the customer profile Utia's ministry is built for. Utia clasps her hands in prayer and tells him he'll figure it out once he actually does it, her red eye glowing like a router that is just connected directly to the divine server. The knight lunges forward with a glowing weapon, a golden sword strikes the ground, and the conversion sequence activates with enough light to make you forget what color doubt used to be. The knight bows before the hooded Utia. White light erupts, and they float together in a luminous void where architecture dissolves and faith becomes a renewable resource. Utia looks down and asks if they shall pray together, adding that she can do that over and over again, which is either devotional tenderness or the most chilling subscription service ever offered. Utia walks into a grand cathedral hall with the newly converted knight at her side, and a congregation in white robes bows in the pews beneath her. She is not just a sister, she is the unquestioned spiritual authority of the Holy Kingdom. She raises one arm at the top of the staircase, smug as a woman who has just filed a successful rebranding campaign, and the title card drops. Utia Bludia, sister of the Holy Kingdom Rosario, the patron's guardian, now has a business card. And just to remind us who the actual protagonist is, Evan reads a banquet invite at a gray mailbox while Alon is probably somewhere eating a sweet potato and wondering why his pen pal became a pope. Ladon stands alone on a rooftop above Rexus, reading a letter with the kind of quiet intensity that makes a whole city nervous. He looks down at the paper and decides, out loud, that he has to start his revenge as soon as possible. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Patron's Guardian, where every letter from Alon is a loaded gun someone else pulls the trigger on. We rewind to Alan in his study, reading Utia's latest letter while looking like a man who has emotionally checked out of noble life. She is the only one who writes back, which is both flattering and slightly alarming, since her letters read less like correspondence and more like status reports from a cult. Alon admits, mostly to himself, that he has already achieved his actual goal. The children are off the path of destruction. But he also sounds weirdly lonely that none of the others send letters, which is the emotional equivalent of founding a fan club and complaining that only the president shows up to meetings. He tries to reach inner peace through meditation, which lasts approximately 4 seconds before Evan arrives with paperwork. Alon claims he is fine in a voice that suggests he is absolutely not fine, and the scene cuts away before the desk can absorb any more of his emotional damage. Evan walks in with 4 intelligence reports, and the way he is holding that little card tells you none of them are going to be relaxing. Alon sits up like a man who has just been informed his subscription to peace and quiet has been cancelled. First report. Solrang is on a 32-win combat streak, and is now approaching the Baba Yaga title at the top of the colony. The Wolf Girl has apparently decided that the fastest way to say thank you for the care package is to become the strongest fighter in a desert wasteland. Second report. Deus personally eliminated Kirga, the barbarian chief of the Snowfield, the same monster ritual god Alon had to fight in his past life. Alon is shaken because Deus just soloed a boss that previously required a full raid party, a lot of potions, and several emotional breakdowns. Evan calmly clarifies that Kirga was the leader of the barbarians who metamorphose into monsters through rituals, as if that makes the news less horrifying. Alon processes this with the facial expression of a man whose auto-hunt settings have produced results he did not authorize. Alon remembers battling those barbarians in the game and having to eliminate their god, Ultulrus, which is not a name you forget because it sounds like a rejected final boss from a fantasy tabletop campaign. The fact that Deus skipped the god and went straight for the chief is not comforting. Third report. Rhine has opened her own mystical appraisal shop, which, Alon notes with the mild approval of a man who has no idea that shop is also a front for relic-based world domination. He says she is doing fine on her own, which is technically true in the same way a volcano is doing fine on its own. Fourth report. Ladon has become the captain of the first archipelago of the 7 pirate paradises off the coast of Rexus City. Alon's face goes through several stages of grief in under a second because that was not in any version of the plan he remembers writing. Alon collapses in shock and despair, clutching his head like the paperwork just personally betrayed him. A pirate, he repeats, as if saying the word enough times will make it untrue. The universe, as usual, does not negotiate. The scene shifts to Alon's mental reconstruction of how this happened, Ladon diving into the ocean off Rexus, salvaging relics from the Old Sea era. Alon reasons that Ladon must have used those ancient artifacts to close the power gap and defeat the previous captain, which is a very generous way of saying his kid became a pirate warlord through underwater looting. Bianco appears in the background looking far too excited about all of this, while Alon calmly asks how Ladon eliminated a captain who should have been superhuman. He lands on the theory that Ladon only salvaged the real gems, which is the kind of optimistic guess you make when you do not want to picture the actual violence involved. Back in reality, Alon is lying in bed staring at a glowing device like a man doom-scrolling his own life. An unnamed associate asks how it feels to have a pirate son, and the silence that follows is louder than any answer could be. We get the scenic establishing shots of the tropical coast and the pirate city beyond it, which look peaceful until you remember what kind of economy they run. The 7 pirate paradises are introduced with the calm framing of a travel brochure that absolutely does not mention the murder rate. The narration confirms Ladon became the new captain of the first archipelago, and the panel gives us Ladon standing there with the relaxed confidence of a man who has already killed his way to middle management. He does not even look surprised, which is arguably the scariest part. Bianco lounges on a rooftop like a retired villain enjoying the weather, while Ladon asks what the Great Moon is, admitting he never cared enough to learn. This is the spiritual equivalent of joining a company and not reading the employee handbook until after you have already taken over a department. Ladon reads Alon's letter in a dim stone chamber, lying back with the paper held above him like a holy scripture. The letter is probably just Alon asking how the weather is, but Ladon is translating it into a divine command with his whole chest. The act pivots hard into backstory. A flashback shows Utia as a child in a white hall, surrounded by her people, before she is thrown backward through a luminous void. The tone shifts from accidental comedy to generational trauma so fast you can hear the genre whiplash. Hunters tracked down Utia's people and dragged her away, and the panel does not flinch from showing how small she was when it happened. She reaches out in terror, while a man pulls her back from the carnage, and her voiceover lands with the weight of a backstory that explains far too much about the adult she becomes. The same flashback block gives us Ladon's origin tragedy. As a child, he watched hunters slaughter his parents and sell him into slavery. The visual rhymes between Utia and Ladon are not accidental. The series wants you to understand that the Patron's guardian rescued kids who had already been broken by the same world. Back in the present, Ladon stands on a grassy cliff and resolves to pursue revenge while making it look like he is following Alon's treasure hunter order. This is the single most polite act of open rebellion in the series so far, and it is also the most terrifying because he genuinely believes he is obeying. Fireworks explode over a pirate ship while Ladon studies wanted posters with the focused gaze of a man updating his to-do list. The celebration is happening because he won, but the look on his face says the real work starts now. The pirate paradise is shown in full party mode, lanterns, barrels of whatever they drink, and a man smoking a cigar while explaining that only the chosen great pirate can receive the heavenly king's protection. It is world building, wrapped in a pirate aesthetic, and it lands with the energy of a faction introduction that will absolutely come back to bite everyone. Underwater, a scaled hand grips a glowing blue crystal, and Ladon's merman heritage finally gets its visual due. He reaches toward a sphere of light and water surrounded by mirrored figures, and the scene confirms that his power is not just pirate politics, it is something older and far less human. A ritual scene shows robed figures kneeling in crimson energy, followed by wanted posters fluttering through fireworks. The celebration and the cult imagery are happening at the same time, which is a very efficient way to establish that Ladon's pirate kingdom runs on both party culture and inherited blood rights. The chapter closes on Ladon's burning rage, those damned hunters, as he stares toward the word 7 in a swirling purple void. His target is the 7 archipelago captains who performed the sea godkin ritual using his parents' bodies, and the act ends on the realization that the patron's guardian just acquired a vengeance arc he absolutely did not sign up for. A cloaked figure stands on a grassy cliff above Rexus, fireworks popping behind a rival ship like the universe is celebrating a murder he hasn't committed yet. This is the patron's guardian in its purest form, a man who sent a birthday card, and the recipient just realized it was a tactical nuke. We rewind to Ladon, holding the goggles of Amarita Alon, mailed him, a relic that sounds like a prog rock album and functions like a divine metal detector. He stares at it the way a man stares at a gift receipt he definitely did not ask for. Ladon dives into the deep ocean off Rexus, long white hair trailing like he's doing a shampoo commercial for vengeance. The pendant flares and underwater geometry lights up around him. Because of course the relic locator needs a magic circle, this is not a Fisher-Price toy. The gift's true function hits him. It identifies and locates ancient sea-era relics with the ease of a GPS that also hates your enemies. Ladon now has a treasure map to every sunken power source in the archipelago, which is the kind of care package that destabilizes governments. Back on the cliff, Ladon watches the rival ship and understands the full invoice. Alon didn't just hand him a target, he handed him the exact power needed to kill that target. This is not sponsorship. This is a man ordering a pizza and the delivery driver receiving a tank. He says it out loud. The Great Moon not only pushed his revenge in front of him, but bestowed the power to carry it out. Ladon has now fully accepted Alon as his personal deity, and Alon is probably somewhere wondering if his letter was too formal. Ladon stands golden gauntleted and shirtless in the moonlight, looking like a pirate king who just read the employee handbook and discovered he's actually the CO. Utia watches from a ledge above, with the smug, red-eyed satisfaction of a woman whose cult recruitment metrics are trending upward. Meanwhile, Alon is riding south in a noble convoy, completely untouched by the cosmic gratitude he just inspired. Bianca lounges somewhere being far too excited about pirate politics, while Alon treats the trip like a commute he did not schedule. At a rest stop that night, Counts Krilda and Edelon decide to perform a diss track about how Alon is a lucky fool with no real underworld power. They are smiling. The smile of men who have no idea the underworld is currently being reorganized around the potato eater. They're insulting. Alan internally compares them to internet haters and wishes he could capture their nonsense as a PDF, which is the most corporate slave response to aristocratic bullying ever recorded. He has been demoted from mastermind to lucky manchild in their minds, and he is fine with it. Then Evan appears with roasted corn, because every scene of political humiliation needs a snack break. Alon and Evan sit against a stone wall eating in peaceful solidarity while the Counts keep ranting, which to Alon now sounds like background diss rap he can mostly ignore. Alon notes that these guys are starting to cross the line, but his mouth is full of corn, so the threat level is ambiguous. This is peak. Patron's guardian energy, world-shaking forces align around him, and he's prioritizing carbohydrates. We cut north to a frozen battlefield where a Caliburn knight has just tricked barbarian chief Kulkin's warriors into an ambush disguised as honorable combat. For a culture that treats death in battle as the highest honor, this is roughly the emotional equivalent of a participation trophy made of betrayal. The barbarians realize too late that chivalry has been cancelled for tonight's episode. A white-haired figure watches the carnage and observes that if everything had been intended, then someone planned this massacre like a wedding planner with a very specific theme. A young man bows over a glowing pocket watch under a starry sky, and another silver-haired figure holds a golden chain close to his face like he's reading a horoscope that says, "Murder is legal today." The Northern Front is operating on cult hours now. Back with Alon's convoy, 2 detained men are questioned beside the road, while Alon eats a sweet potato with the expressionless serenity of a man who has already decided this is not his problem. The fundamental quality of gamers, he thinks, is the ability to ignore side quests. Evan sits by the campfire, looking like a bodyguard who has accepted that his employer's main combat skill is emotional detachment. Alon complains that some foolish brat only brought a thug knight with him, and Evan offers to debone the sweet potato, because that is the support class we have. 2 unnamed conspirators with glowing yellow eyes agree to move their plan into the underworld, which is the kind of sentence that sounds ominous until you remember the underworld is currently Alon's fan club. They are not moving into the shadows, they are moving into someone else's group chat. Night falls, and goblin-variant crystal monsters ambush the convoy in numbers that suggest someone ordered the swarm size in bulk. Red eyes blink in the darkness like a rave nobody wanted, and the soldiers immediately discover their vision budget has been cut. A knight shouts for mages to secure vision first, which is a very polite way of saying, "We cannot see anything and would like to not die." The monsters press in, and the front line starts folding like a lawn chair under an elephant. A golden energy sphere erupts from somewhere in the convoy, and a long-haired figure raises a thin sword against the dark sky. The panel is doing that thing where it hides who cast what, which means we are about to find out someone has been leveling off screen. Orc-like monsters with purple crystals and red eyes loom over fallen soldiers, and the swarm keeps coming. These things have clearly respawned without a cooldown. The convoy is learning the hard way that this was not a random encounter. This was a raid boss with minions. A massive blue-skinned monster collapses, but another soldier goes down beside it. The trade ratio is not favorable. One knight gasps that there are too many of them, and the panel agrees by showing about 40 more red eyes in the background. More monsters charge, and a blue-haired woman with a staff realizes this means something worse than a simple ambush. The purple crystals on these creatures are not decoration. They are a weather report, and the forecast is Outer God. A green monster roars. A gray one gets struck by something fast, and armored figures reel from impacts they did not see coming. The fight has reached that stage where everyone is just reacting to the next thing that explodes. Then a jagged purple slash cuts through the battlefield, and we get the close-up, one glowing violet eye, dark knight armor, and the absolute certainty that Deus Macallion has arrived. The Sin of Sloth is clocking in for overtime, and he does not look tired. Deus blasts knights aside with puppet string energy, because apparently sloths now means efficient mass violence. The panel gives us motion blur, purple streaks, and several people discovering gravity at the same time. A blue monster gets sliced in half, another takes a punch that rearranges its posture, and a long-haired man with a wand complains that third circle rock wall plus second circle shield is somehow not enough. Sir, your build is fine, the encounter is just broken. Alon finally activates his bracelet artifact and says the words, enhancement, compression, return to the origins. That is either a spell incantation or the name of a very aggressive skincare routine, and the result is a purple-white blast that sweeps the monster swarm like a broom through dust. The energy orb streaks across the dark landscape, monsters get deleted in bulk, and a cloaked man watches with his guards like he's reviewing a product demo. Alon's bracelet just performed a limited-time area of effect sale, and the swarm is not eligible for returns. Utia reacts in shock from somewhere off-field, her red eye wide because she just felt the great moon flex through whatever cult sense these people share. A clenched fist erupts with purple energy, and black crystalline rocks shatter under the aftershock. Alon, glowing wide-eyed and reaching forward, triggers the technique again, return to the origins, and the blast tears through the remaining monsters. He looks like a man who just discovered his remote control has a button he never noticed before. The battlefield is now mostly shredded monsters and very impressed soldiers. A man in a dark cloak takes a massive white slash across the frame, and the survivors start reconsidering every rumor they ever heard about Count Palladio. Alon stands amid the carnage, looking exhausted but technically alive, while two older observers on a balcony realize their political calculus just got rewritten. He reaches forward one more time, and the last orcs discover that the fight is over and they lost the raffle. The mopping up continues with sword strikes, shield bashes, and one very chaotic group fight where a hooded figure, green monsters, and multiple knights all disagree about who should be dying. Spoiler, it is not the protagonist's side. A blonde warrior cuts through green monsters with white energy, and Alon reaches out to unleash another burst that sends muscular enemies flying like they forgot to read the terms of service. The bracelet is still warm, and Alon's mana hole is probably making distressed noises. A gray monster takes a purple blast to the face, energy slashes cross in midair, and the last visible threats get reduced to particle effects. The convoy has survived, but only because Alon accidentally treated a monster ambush like a magic stress test. A man in glasses and a dark cloak gets struck by the final slash, and Udia appears in purple armor to deliver one last violent punctuation mark. The battlefield is now a resume entry for everyone involved, and the Blue Moon's reputation just got another unsolicited 5-star review. Wide shot of the wasteland, fallen monsters, standing knights, and the quiet realization that this was not supposed to happen. A massive green monster stands dominant over smaller defeated figures, while in a completely different scene, some nobles at a ball are still gossiping because the rich do not pause for apocalypses. Alon stands between two colossal stone statues, like he's being sized up for a monument he did not commission. A glowing green energy orb manifests near a fallen figure's chest, and the vibe shifts from, "we won," to "what exactly did we just disturb?" Alon is sweating now, heartbeat onomatopoeia doing the talking for him, and he pants while clutching his pendant like it's the only receipt he has for what just happened. Evan is nearby, probably wondering if he should bring more corn or start evacuating. He gets trapped inside a large, glowing purple crystal, which is one way to process trauma, and a text box asks the question on everyone's mind. Why did divine descent just occur? The crystal is very pretty and very concerning, like a Tiffany lamp announcing the end times. Utia appears, white silver hair and a high ponytail, blue aura around her like she just walked out of a divine salon appointment. She explains that divine descent is a bizarre trait that appears when an outer god is about to descend, and she says it with the calm of someone who has read the patch notes. Two young men stand in the battlefield as text explains the real problem. Outer gods should only appear after the 5 deadly sins descend and the laws of the world collapse. A winged, hooded figure with one giant eye floats before a crimson magic circle, looking like a god that did not RSVP. Silhouettes gather in a purple-crimson void, and a manner burns in the flashback that illustrates what happens when the sins fully awaken. The apocalypse is not theoretical anymore. It is a burning house in the background of Alan's vacation itinerary. Alon broods with his hand on his forehead, asking what exactly the problem is, which is rhetorical because the problem is everything. He walks forward with Evan and 2 generic attendants, looking like a man whose travel plans have been upgraded from uncomfortable to existential. They finally arrive at the Grand Ball Academy estate, a sprawling castle under golden light that looks expensive and exhausting. Alon mutters that he wants to go home and sleep, which is the most relatable thing a noble has said in this entire arc. We circle back to that lone white-haired figure on the wall under fireworks, and the young man with glowing white eyes looking up in awe. The patron's guardian is not a single person. It is a network of believers who keep receiving care packages they interpret as commandments, and none of them are wrong enough to stop. Alon Palacio stands in the middle of the grand ball like a man who got invited to a wedding he definitely did not RSVP for, and the entire room has decided he planned the assassination. The ceiling is doing a chandelier flex. The nobles are clustering in their little gossip guilds, and somewhere in this gold-plated anxiety box, our protagonist is about to learn that his reputation has outpaced his actual life by roughly 3 countries. Bianca is here, laughing like a man whose monocle costs more than your house, which confirms that Kalia's pet wizard has brought his full pinstripe energy to the party. Alon tries his patented social strategy of standing near people without making eye contact. And the moment a noble turns toward him, the poor man looks like he just made eye contact with a boss whose cutscene you cannot skip. 2 unnamed noblemen roll up with a cured ham, the size of a small child, and a chest of gold, which is the aristocratic version of sliding into someone's DMs with a sponsorship offer. Alan responds with the emotional range of a vending machine and a second circle magic display that makes both bribers drop to their knees like they just realized the interview was not, in fact, casual. The witnesses immediately start diagnosing what they just saw, and the consensus is second circle magic, which in this economy is apparently enough to make grown nobles forget how to stand. And then the room whispers the line that will follow Alon for the rest of his political career, the cold and cruel true nature of Palladio, which is hilarious because the coldest thing about this man is his sweet potato. The 2 bribers are now doing a full noble grovel, faces to the floor, while Alon stands over them with the confused patience of a substitute teacher who did not ask for this much authority. Alon briefly considers explaining that he is not, in fact, a political mastermind, but decides that correcting the rumor would require effort he does not possess, and social skills he has already demonstrated he does not have. He pivots to the buffet. Because if the world is going to misread you as a villain, you might as well do it with a tart in your hand, and the egg tart is apparently good enough to justify the entire social outing. Alon munches through the political tension like it is a side quest he is speedrunning, and the nobles around him continue to interpret every chew as a calculated threat. The narration drops the faction bomb. 2 mastermind families do not get along. The Zenonia Red Crest and the Altea Blue Mountain Crest are basically rival guilds, and Alon has somehow been assigned to a team he did not apply for. He overhears someone call him the head of a faction, and Alon's internal response is the emotional equivalent of a loading screen, because this man has never led anything more organized than his own snack schedule. Panic sets in as Alon realizes people are actually taking the faction rumor seriously, which is the natural consequence of being too lazy to deny something you assumed would die in group chat. Loria Altea shows up looking like the final girl of a ducal massacre, and calmly identifies Kalia as the daughter of Zenonia, which is the kind of casual intel drop that rearranges the entire room's threat assessment. Kalia makes her garden entrance with the confidence of a woman who has already murdered her father, and is now just shopping for the next political accessory. Purple-haired foreign noble in a red coat introduces himself to Alon with the energy of a man who has already decided he is the main character of this conversation. Alon looks this man up and down and delivers the line of the evening. Wow, these days even twisted donuts can talk, which is the most devastating thing you can say to someone whose entire personality is their hair. The purple-haired noble tries to recover by flirting with Kalia, who is having absolutely none of it, and the scene becomes a live demonstration of what happens when a donut tries to romance a viper. Kalia's reaction is the exact moment the donut realizes he has misread the room, the woman, and possibly his own reflection, and the panel gives us the visual equivalent of a career-ending error message. The noble storms off and immediately marks Alon as a perfect target to vent on, which is the classic bully move of losing to a woman and deciding to punch the nearest snack eater. Before the donut can fully commit to his mistake, Bianco materializes with the quiet menace of a butler who has already filed the paperwork for your social destruction. Duke Liger and Marquard Daniel are formally introduced, the aristocratic faction leader and the royalist, and both of them are now watching Alon like he is a stock they are not sure whether to buy or short. Bianco publicly asks the purple-haired noble if there is a reason he is calling a noble's name so disrespectfully, and the man folds so fast you could use him as a napkin. He flees the hall screaming about his discourtesy, while military officers watch in the background, and the donut has now been reduced to a speed bump in Alon's evening. Duke Liger and Marquard Daniel approach Alon directly, and the conversation immediately becomes a political chess match where Alon does not know he is holding the queen. Mardenio probes about Alon's magic research and dangles a pretty good artifact in front of him, and Alon considers correcting the whole faction misunderstanding before deciding that silence has snacks and explanations do not. Alan could not beat the temptation and kept his silence, which is how you accidentally become the head of a political faction in a kingdom you were just trying to survive in. Postball. Two unknown schemers debrief in a quiet room, and the line that lands is the realization that presenting a gift to the head of the faction means they have now locked Alon into a game he never agreed to play. Thankfully, he accepted the gift, they say, which is the political version of, thank goodness the bomb we handed him did not explode in our faces yet. The chapter closes with a woman in black mourning attire lifting her veil to reveal a slight smile, and the patron's guardian just acquired a new subscriber who is absolutely not here for the open bar. Loria Altea is doing the mourning veil and politics combo look, meeting an informant who tells her Duke Altea personally showed up to handpick nobles with a bribe and a rite of passage attached. Translation: the Altea family just activated its political recruitment event, and Loria is taking notes. Alon, meanwhile, has decided that being falsely rumored as the head of some shadow faction is basically a loot drop he can farm. His internal monologue lands on, I must seize this opportunity, which is the most optimistic sentence a man has ever said about his own misunderstanding arc. And then the title card hits in Korean, I became a patron of villains. Loria smiles like she knows something the kingdom doesn't, and honestly, at this point, she probably does. Alon is speedrunning the banquet circuit, collecting gifts under false pretenses, because if everyone insists you are a mastermind, you might as well get a mansion's worth of free wine and jewelry out of it. He calls it a hit and run. The kingdom calls it diplomacy. Evan watches this with the patient expression of a man who has seen his employer turn social anxiety into a Ponzi scheme before. Alon announces they are stopping by somewhere on the way home, and Evan's face says he already knows this will not be a normal errand. Alon drops that they are going north, specifically to Caliban, and Evan asks if he is perhaps planning to go to the north like, that is a normal Tuesday question. Alon says he will explain on the way, which means he absolutely does not have a full explanation yet. Cut to Alon, slumped on a sofa having an existential migraine because a winged, one-eyed outer god entity just informed him that divine descent is basically a cosmic gotcha pull. You cannot predict which god descends or when. Alon has seen hundreds of apocalypse timelines from his gaming days, and he is now trying to no-hit run all of them simultaneously. He covers his face like a man who just realized the game he played for years was actually a survival horror tutorial. The banquet gifts are still in the carriage, but Alan's mood has left the party entirely. The visuals flash through burning cities and collapsing kingdoms, because the game's true ending montage is not subtle about what happens if the sins roll out. Alon knows the patch notes by heart, and every single one ends with the allied kingdoms will crumble and collapse. So Alon seals a letter with his purple wax stamp and writes the most honest mission statement in the series. I can't guarantee anything, but I have to try anyway. This is the only way. It is simultaneously heroic and a massive admission that he is winging it. That letter reaches Deus Macallian, who reacts with the sudden realization of a man who just got a quest marker from the one non-player character he did not expect to mail him. The sin of sloth has been auto-hired, and he does not know it yet. Alon arrives in a sunny Caliban town square and finds young Deus doing the golden sparkle protagonist pose in a blue vest. Internally, Alon notes that no matter how much this world diverges from the game, Deus will eventually become famous and strong because main character privileges do not expire. Deus is cheerful, confident, and absolutely radiating the energy of a kid who has been leveling while Alon was eating egg tarts. The spectral silhouettes behind him are doing the anime thing where the protagonist's future selves are already flexing. Hero panel. Alon walks up to Deus and dumps the entire banquet gift haul at his feet. Deus looks like someone just told him his Uber Eats order was free and also included the restaurant. Deus offers Alon a small pouch in return, and Alon counters by handing him magical vials and a mountain of wrapped boxes. Evan is already opening the case like this is a perfectly normal transaction, because for this household it basically is. Alon tells him, "It's all yours," and Deus stares at the pile like he is trying to calculate whether this is a test, a blessing, or a tax write-off. He asks why Alon is suddenly giving him everything, and the honest answer is that Alon is investing in the protagonist's future, like a startup with guaranteed returns. A muscular aide steps in and announces that this is the name of the patron Deus should be grateful to when he succeeds. Alon has just been formally declared Deus's patron in public, and his internal reaction is mostly, I must have won him over, right? Which is not how sponsorship contracts work, but it is how this story works. Deus departs joyfully, waving like a kid who just got sent to Hero Summer Camp with full funding. Alon watches him go, with the serene expression of a man who has just outsourced the apocalypse to someone more qualified. Back in private, Alon sits across from Evan and delivers the line that defines the entire act. In case you didn't know, I've set the protagonist on auto hunt. Long live pay to win. It is the most honest thing he has ever said about his strategy, and also the most cursed. Evan's painted portrait is shown for exactly no reason, other than to remind us that this man has seen everything and is still employed. Alon explains that Deus will become famous and strong despite the ordinary clothes, because wardrobe does not determine main character status. Alon shrugs and says, the stronger he is, the better, while the panel shows a silver-haired figure introducing young Deus and a red-haired girl in a sunlit yard. That red-haired girl is silly, and the reunion is already loading in the background while Alon is still optimizing his build spreadsheet. Deus, now alone in a carriage, is suddenly hit by the emotional weight of what just happened. His shadow self looms with glowing violet eyes as he whispers, "She'll meet me, right? I never even visited the orphanage because I was scared." The patron's guardian just realized his own sister is the real quest reward, and the carriage stops on an autumn road like the universe is giving him a moment to panic. The boy who was once a slave has become a knight, and he chooses gratitude over power. Deus Macallian steps forward beside Alon Palladio, violet eyes blazing, and asks the knights the only question that matters, "Lay a hand upon my benefactor?" The purple energy around him answers before they do. We circle back. Alon is leaving with Loria Altia and Deus, officially traveling to prepare for the war against the outer gods, which is a fancy way of saying road trip with the kid I accidentally sponsored into godhood. Deus waves goodbye like a child sent to Hero Summer Camp, and the carriage rolls out, while Alon still thinks he is the one in charge of this relationship. Alon arrives at Caliban as Count, looking like a man who would rather be eating sweet potatoes in bed. Evan reports a slight issue, which is the military way of saying several unexpected knights have arrived by lavish carriage and they did not come for tea. The courtyard is already tense before Alon even finishes leaning against his luggage. A smug knight named Vaughn arrives at the northern gate with the confidence of a man who has already written his own victory cutscene. He is Vrain, direct disciple of Master Knight Fiola, the Fourth Sword, and he rolls in with his own crew, their energy immediately broadcasting, "We are about to ruin someone's afternoon." Vaughn starts spinning a story about a debt his friend Carmine claims is owed, which definitely never happened, and his knights fan out like they have been practicing this intimidation formation. Alon stands there with the blank patience of a man who is already mentally checked out of this conversation. Then, Vaughn drops the demand, hand over everything in the carriage, or face the consequences. Swords come out. Vaughn's crew surrounds Alon with the enthusiasm of a raid party that thinks the boss is underleveled. Alon, meanwhile, is internally calculating that this disciple of a master knight has nothing he wants, and even less that he fears. His fist crackles with reverse heaven lightning, and the tutorial boss just realized he picked the wrong save file. Alon and Evan are surrounded. The knights close in like they have never read a manhwa before. Evan stands ready with the exhausted loyalty of a bodyguard who has already filed the incident report in his head. Vaughn, surveying the scene, believes there is nothing for him to lose. This is the favor Carmine asked him to fulfill. Vaughn is still monologuing about how he has everything to gain, which is technically true but spiritually wrong. Alon's fist charges with white lightning, and the air decides it does not want to be air anymore. Vaughn swings forward with a manic grin, charging at Alon. The fight is now live, and one of these men has not updated his build since the prologue. Energy erupts. A knight gets grabbed by the throat like he is a tutorial dummy. Bodies start hitting the dirt with the rhythm of a choreo that absolutely hits different. Deus is not even visible yet, but the battlefield already feels like it belongs to someone else. Alan stands in the middle of it all, wondering when his afternoon went off script. A knight chokes out, "W, who?" which is the correct response when the difficulty spike walks in wearing dark armor. Deus Macallian has arrived, and he is not asking questions. He punches one knight so hard the man's ancestors feel it, then turns to the group with the calm authority of someone who has already decided the fight is over. Vaughn gasps in pain and outrage, suspended mid-air by Deus's grip on his neck, clutching his sword hilt like his pride is having a heart attack. Deus stands beside Alon and repeats the line that now defines this entire arc. "Lay a hand upon my benefactor?" The purple aura around him makes the question rhetorical. The knights freeze because their survival instincts finally loaded. Deus moves. The sound effect is the only warning the knights get before they start flying backward like they are in a twice-concert mosh pit. Vaughn is launched into the dirt with the kind of impact that usually requires a content warning. Alon does not even flinch. He has seen enough patch notes to know when a character has been buffed beyond recognition. Deus is not fighting. He is collecting. He slams Vaughn face first into the ground, grabs him by the hair, and the purple energy does the rest. Vaughn panics and screams as Deus continues to land kick after kick without mercy. The Sin of Sloth is wide awake, and his patron is standing right there looking mildly inconvenienced. Close up on Deus's violet eye. That is not a knight looking back at you. That is a weapon that has decided it likes its owner. The remaining knights react with the exact expression you make when the boss's second phase starts and you are already out of healing items. Deus unloads. A purple crown symbol flashes, a knight gets punched into another dimension, and blood splatters across the frame like the art team got carried away. Alon watches, blood spattered, and says the most understated thing in the episode, the present-day Deus. Yes, Alon. This is what happens when you give a main character unlimited funding and emotional attachment. The fight keeps going because Deus is not done proving a point. He slams another attacker into the ground, kicks a third, and the wasteland starts looking like a loading screen for a boss arena. Alon turns to Evan and admits, with the calm of a man reviewing a quarterly report, that Deus strikes quite well. Evan's face says he is updating his resume to include "survived the Sin of Sloth." Deus's inner monologue drops in a golden void. He calls, "Lay a hand upon my benefactors," an exceedingly subjective perspective, which is the most philosophy major way to justify a massacre. His thought bubble shows Elon as a small black cat eating peacefully in a field, and honestly, that is the most accurate visual summary of Elon's entire character. Elon watches the carnage and sighs, "That rascal, honestly." Deus, blood-stained fist and all, narrates that Alon has matured into an exceptionally upright young man, which is hilarious because Alon is currently standing in a crime scene he did not plan. Evan throws an arm around Alon's shoulder and announces, "This father is proud," while Deus lunges and Carmine screams. The family dynamic is weird, but it works. The battlefield goes quiet. Vaughn is slumped against a tree, barely able to move after Deus's relentless assault. Alon steps over the carnage and asks, with genuine curiosity, "Is this not a bit excessive?" Deus walks calmly through the blood-soaked field, and the full group shot lands: the massive knight, the confused count, the proud bodyguard, and one very silent guard. Vaughn crouches in defeat before Deus, and the surviving knights look like they are reconsidering every life choice that led them to this wasteland. Deus smirks back at them, unbothered, untouched, absolutely main character coded. The Patron's Guardian is not a title Alon asked for, but it is the one that just kept him alive.